Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to the Buha's Block NBA Draft live show. As you guys can see, I am joined by three guests. These are three people that have been working behind the scenes tirelessly on the Buha's Block operation. I'm excited to introduce you all to them. Going clockwise here, we got Keoni, we got Kevin, and we got Vijay. So I'm going to open up the floor for each of them to introduce themselves, share their relationship to the Lakers, how they became fans, also their relationship with the show. So I'll start with you, Keoni. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name's Keoni. Grew up in Southern California. Started watching the Lakers with my dad when I was a little kid. Used to take me to games. Recently, about a year now, right after he started the podcast, started watching Buha's Block, and just shot him an email one day asking if I could intern for him, and here I am.
My name's Kevin. I've been a Lakers fan since 2018, an NBA fan since 2011. I basically fell in love with the Lakers whenever I just decided to get into it, into the NBA around 2018. For joining the podcast and the Jovan Buha podcast, I've been watching since the beginning, and I basically also just shot him an email. Really interested to work with the Lakers or anything Lakers related, and that's kind of how I got here.
What's up, y'all? I'm Vijay. Recently graduated from USC. I grew up in Cleveland, so I was a big Bron fan growing up and kind of gravitated over towards the Lakers when he came to LA. Reached out to Jovan. Was super awesome to get a chance to work on the pod. And yeah, been watching since the beginning. Super excited.
I appreciate you guys, and shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Rose says, Jovan with the whole team now. Yeah, this has been the silent operation behind the scenes, but we got the Buha's Block group chat, which is alive and well on a daily basis, always sending tweets and rumors and talking about different things. So glad we're able to do this now and hang out with everybody. Then first super chat is from Young Claire. Wiggins report true. Expect Lakers moves tonight. I can say that the Wiggins report is true to the extent that I have heard and can confirm there's been conversation between LA and Miami. I cannot report it to the extent that Anthony has reported it. I don't know how close it is in relation to his reporting, but I have heard the framework of a Rui for Wiggins swap, and we could get right into it of what we think about that. I know Kevin is a Rui guy, so I think he's going to go to bat for his guy. In terms of expecting Lakers moves tonight, I think the Lakers are going to be active. Now, they have a history of being active and not doing much on draft night. The last couple of drafts, they have tried to trade up or tried to trade for certain centers or certain players, and it has not worked out. I think with the Luka extension looming and some of the pressure and urgency with that, I will expect them to be active and to try and be more aggressive, and maybe something happens, but I can't say with certainty that something is going to happen because as we know, the Lakers like to operate in silence. But I'd say based on their track record, they have not tended to do things on draft night the last few drafts. They've also tended not to do summer trades period. If you go back the last few off seasons, which I know has been a frustrating thing for the fan base, but I know they are talking to several teams. They're being aggressive, and I expect them to try to do something tonight. Whether they can pull it off remains to be seen. But let's start with Keoni. What do you think of a potential Wiggins for Rui swap? And I would assume Miami would want more in the deal. They are getting the financial relief of getting off of Wiggins' second year. So Lakers would probably have to put in either Gabe or Maxey to make the salary work. But assuming it's a framework of, let's just say, Rui and Maxey for Wiggins, what would you feel comfortable throwing in, and how would you feel about that potential trade?
I think DK, putting DK in there or the first pick. I don't know about both of those though. Um, but I think definitely an upgrade from Rui. I like Rui, but the two-way ability of Wiggins is exactly what they need um, to pair with LeBron and Austin and Luca, and hopefully a rim running, rim protecting big soon to come as well.
Kevin, defend your boy.
The thing is, like, I'm very biased against Rui because when it comes to Rui, I see so much untapped potential as an NBA player. We've always seen it when either Anthony Davis or LeBron James is out. Rui tends to have higher scoring performances. I just don't really think that players like wings like Rui, who perform great in the playoffs, shoot over 40% from three, are really that available. And I truly believe that, like, compared to Andrew Wiggins and Rui Hachimura, I understand that a lot of people view Andrew Wiggins as the better player, but I just view Rui as someone who, if you put Rui on the Wizards now, not Rui before, he would most likely be a 20 point per game scorer. And for me, Andrew Wiggins is very inconsistent. Yes, he's had great stretches with the Warriors, especially in the Boston finals and that year. But I truly believe that once LeBron retires, Rui is someone that you could rely on as a possibly third scoring option, just because, as we've seen in the past, he does have the potential to go for bursts of like 20 points per game. And I truly only view Rui's only weakness is his dribbling and his focus at times, because we've seen when Rui is locked in defensively and offensively, he can guard centers, he can guard fours, he can guard threes, even though he is a power forward that's being forced to play small forward a lot of the time due to LeBron James. But I just view that if you trade away Rui, the next team that gets him will unlock him. And I feel though sometimes we put Rui Hachimura in a corner a lot of the time in our offense, and we just expect him to just be a corner shooter, but he has so much more to the game in his game, because you've seen Rui as a mismatch on smaller players, and he cooks. But I know he gets so much hate. And right before he got injured this season, he was on a great stretch, especially with Luka. And then obviously with that knee injury, or the knee whatever injury that affects his like jump ability. But I can see the path for Andrew Wiggins being a good third scoring option. I just don't want to give up on Rui, since what we've seen him against the Memphis series and playoff series. And ever since he's joined the Lakers, besides his first year, he's been a 40% 3-point shooter. So that's not that available per se.
What do you think, Vijay?
I think a lot of what Kevin says is accurate and true, but I think the problem with Rui isn't what he brings. It's just that he's redundant with Finney-Smith and Braun there as well. The skill set, especially defensively, is a little bit redundant, and I think that's what Wiggins could bring to the table that Rui and even DFS at a later stage in his career really can't. Wiggins obviously is able to guard on the perimeter, 1s through 3s, and I think that's a lot more valuable to this version of the Lakers. And kind of Rui's strengths can't really be optimized here, because he's not going to get the ball as much as he could in a situation that's kind of a better fit for him. So I think like this idea of like Rui sits in the corner a little too much. I think we need a guy who can do that and do that at a high level while bringing kind of a different defensive look for the Lakers.
Yeah, I think for me, I think you all bring up really good points, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think the thing, to Kevin's point with Rui, is as long as the top of the roster is constructed this way, and who knows, it could change at some point here this offseason. he's at best the fourth scoring option, and with a Luka-centric offense, and then even to a lesser extent, LeBron and Austin as heavy usage second and third options, respectively. Like I feel like there's a ceiling to how much Rui is capable of doing within those constraints, and it's not even a knock on Rui or what he can or can't do. It's just I think I mentioned this before, but I think if you were slotting Rui on OKC and you had like a Chet or a Hartenstein next to him, and then you had the other three guys around him, like I think I think he's a starting four, and the Lakers need a starting three or even a starting two. And that's where I think he's miscast a little bit. Now, if there's a way to get that center and get another starting wing level player and potentially move him to the bench and then create bench centric units where you're featuring him more offensively, I potentially like that path. But just based on the Lakers' limited resources and assets, I feel like to actually upgrade the two spots they need around their quote unquote big three, I think putting Rui in that spot, I thought he got better defensively last year. I think he continues to get better. I just like using him as a wing stopper and even on like some shooting guards, which I think they need from that position. I just don't think that's the best use of his skill set. And then again, you have the redundancy of LeBron, Luka, DFS, and Rui, I think are all fours. So to me, I don't think you can enter the season with all four of those guys. And it's probably going to have to be between Rui and DFS. And just the fact of the matter is Luka and DFS have a great relationship. And that's the guy that he's played the most games with. He's spent the most time with, going back to his Dallas days. So I feel like if it becomes a Rui versus DFS conversation, Rui's probably the odd man out. But we'll see, right? I think it's interesting because I think the ideal like roster build is more keeping some of these guys and just slotting other guys above them in the pecking order, but the Lakers just don't have the resources to pull that off.
If I may chime in,
Sure.
I completely agree with you, Rui being essentially like a great bench scoring option, because I kind of view Rui as how OKC has a bunch of starters that are on their bench. I think Rui's perfect role is he could be our sixth man, like Obi Toppin. So if we had Rui, essentially,
I think he's better than Toppin, for the record.
I do too as well. It's just the thing is like the Lakers were hitting on all cylinders before Rui's injury, right when essentially depending, but Luka's fit with Rui, I believe, was kind of perfect just because he can get so many guys open, and we know that Rui is, in my opinion, Rui's our best three-point shooter, like on our team. And everyone can argue that. I know you could just say other players are. And obviously, I think of a longer term fit because like LeBron's not going to be on the roster in 3+ years, and I feel as though Rui is the perfect protege for LeBron. So I just feel as though if we cut bait on Rui now, and I understand we have to focus on every season, but if we cut bait on Rui now, I truly believe he's going to be an 18 to 22 point per game scorer, and he's going to be one of those players like Alex Caruso or one of those players that we regret trading away.
KCP, Zubac.
KCP, essentially like so many players like Zubac. Like we always look back on those players like we had those players and now they're performing so well outside. And truly, if Rui hadn't gotten injured right before the playoffs, and they only had about like, let's say a week or two to mesh before the playoffs when he came back healthy, I do believe like we would have had a better playoff outlook versus the Timberwolves. And we can't knock down that Rui does step up in the playoffs, and having Rui Hachimura as your fourth option on the team, I do believe is a great asset. But I do understand it's really redundant having LeBron, Rui, DFS, and Luka. But DFS and LeBron, I know DFS is not old, but I don't view him as a super young player, and I feel as though we can rely on Rui more offensively than DFS. But DFS is truly known for his 3 and D. But we have seen Rui perform amazing at defense. I understand it's been really inconsistent, But in that Timberwolves series, we saw him have great spurts against Edwards, and we understand that he can guard centers, even though he has struggled in the past against Jokic and other players. But when Rui is hitting on all cylinders, I just think that that is a piece that is too valuable to give away for a center per se, even though that is something that we do need. But I am biased though, because I truly do believe Rui is a very special player that is limited due to his role, because we do just sit him in the corner and expect him just to sit in the corner, shoot threes, and then play defense, where I think Rui is much more than that. And I talk to you, Jovan, whenever Rui gets more than 10 shots, the Lakers' winning percentage is very, very good. But obviously, you not being the fourth option, you're not going to get 10 shots every game. So it's all depending if Rui locks in or not. But I understand that roster construction means everything. So it's a little more complicated than that.
I'll say this too. I don't know, to Keoni's point earlier, I don't think I would give up a first for Wiggins in this trade. Like I'll say, and I apologize, Kevin, like I do think Wiggins is better than Rui, and I think he would fit better than Rui. So I think he checks like both of those boxes. However, I don't think the gap between those two is enough to warrant a first round pick. I don't even know if it's enough to warrant DK. Like that's the one where I'm kind of haggling with, of is Rui and DK for Wiggins. I don't know. Like that might be, now you have to, like, this is where the Lakers are in a tough spot. And I've made this point several times of, they don't have a lot of those like intermediary assets of just like it's either the pick or not the pick, right? Like they only have one pick to trade. They don't have seconds to throw in. Like they have 1 second tonight, but that's the 55th pick, which is essentially worthless. And then after the draft, they'll have access to their 2032 pick, second round pick, but that's still a ways away. So it's like they're just kind of in a tough spot where I think honestly Rui and Dalton, or Rui and a first, is too much for me on the Wiggins front, because you also have to remember you're taking on the extra year of Wiggins. You're doing Miami a favor to an extent. Like maybe if they're throwing in something else, I don't know if that's another player. I don't know if that's a second or a couple seconds or something on their end, but I don't think I for sure would not do Rui in a first. I don't know if I would do Rui and Dalton. I think that might be too much for me. What do you guys think? I'll start. Keoni, looks like you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Whenever I'm like saying, "Oh, we should move this guy," or the Lakers rather should move this guy, it's not about like that player. I like Rui as a player. I just think, like you said, Wiggins is a better fit for the way the roster is constructed. And with Rui, the one thing I think he tries to do a little more than he's capable of. He tries to do a lot of off the dribble stuff. And I think he'd be better, and the Lakers would be better if he was just more a catch and shoot, slash to the basket, rebound, and effort defend. But he tries to do too much off the dribble stuff, and he's just not very good at it.
Vijay?
Yeah, I think someone in the chat mentioned it also, but the same way I kind of would encourage people to not have too much recency bias about Austin's performance against Minnesota. I think that applies in the opposite direction for Rui too. I think we've seen him have some really awesome playoff series, like against Memphis and against Minnesota this past season, but I don't know if it's completely accurate to say he's shown up and been the best version of himself in every playoff series that the Lakers have been in, especially against Denver last season. I thought they neutralized him and kind of like took him out of the game at some point. And that has to also kind of factor into the long-term fit. And I think the calculus is different now with Luka, right? Like you want to surround him with 3-and-D wings, especially wings that can guard at the point of attack. And I think kind of not getting rid of, but kind of alleviating your stockpile of these kind of power forward build bodies and replacing them with guys that are a little bit more athletic that can guard on the perimeter is a nice way to fast track the Luka build.
For the record, the Dallas Mavericks are officially on the clock with the first pick. We are here in part to recap and react to the draft. So I wonder who Dallas is going to take at number 1. Let's move on. We got a few super chats already. So let's get on to the next one from Young Claire. Appreciate you, Young Claire. Okongwu or Kessler a real option? I can now share some things that I have been sitting on. So I can share that I have heard that at the 2025 trade deadline, the Lakers offered the Mark Williams package for Walker Kessler, Jalen Duren, and Onyeka Okongwu, and all 3 of those teams respectively rejected that offer. So that was Dalton Connect, the Lakers first round pick, and a pick swap. So the Lakers best offer is still that, essentially, right? Like they can maybe throw in another pick swap. They could throw in Shake Milton's non-guaranteed contract if you want that. But like, unless you want a Rui or a Gabe as a rotation player, depending on which team it is, there's not really much more the Lakers can add into those packages. So I think on the Kessler front, it would take Danny Ainge playing fair ball with the Lakers, which has not always been the case, let's say. And there's a reason why they kept him out of the Luka talks until the 11th hour. And then with Atlanta, I know people are now thinking Okongwu is more available because of Porzingis, but you have to remember Porzingis is not the, let's say, beacon of health and availability. He's coming off back-to-back years playing under 60 games and even, was banged up in this past postseason. So I don't think they're trading for Porzingis, viewing him as the full-time starting center who's going to be available for 70 plus games. I think I don't know if they're going to go double big or like they're going to have to figure out how they construct their starting front court. But I expect Porzingis to miss some time, even if it's just in a load management sense. And at that point, you're going to want Okongwu. So I think this all but assures that Clint Capella's gone. I don't expect Clint Capella to be back in Atlanta, and that could be an option for the Lakers with that 5.7 taxpayer MLE. But in terms of these 2 guys being available for the potential packages that the Lakers could offer, I think both teams would want more. And if I'm Atlanta, I look at the East, and I know we were texting about the other day, like Atlanta, I think has a real shot to potentially be as high as the 4 seed in the East with how things are shaking up right now. Like I would put Cleveland, New York, and Orlando as the top 3 for me in that order, but you could quibble with the order. But right there, like at 4, it could be Atlanta, it could be Detroit, I guess Milwaukee, just because they have Giannis, although I'm not a fan of most of that roster. So I think Atlanta has a real shot to be a surprise team in the conference, and that to me would suggest that they wouldn't just want to give up on Okongwu. So I would say both are unlikely. I wouldn't rule out either one necessarily, but I think it's going to be at least that package, if not the Lakers maybe flipping something else to get another asset to throw in there. But what do you guys think about the potential fits of Okongwu or Kessler in LA? I'll start with you, Keoni.
I like Kessler better than Okongwu. I think Okongwu's a more realistic option. I just don't think Utah's gonna. Trader Danny's gonna extract the most blood he can out of Rob to get that deal done. So I don't see him as an option unless they're willing to move AR to acquire more assets to get that done, and I don't think they are. So I think Okongwu's better. I think we have to wait and see. I think Okongwu's like a deadline option. I think we'll have to see how Atlanta progresses because if Porzingis isn't playing and they're not performing well and they have injuries, they could be a seller at the deadline. But I agree with you, Jovan. I think to start the season, they're going for it. And I think that's what that trade was about. I saw an interview with their GM the other day, and he was like, we got to get Okongwu some help, some size, so it's not all on his shoulders. And that's exactly what they did a day later. So I don't think either one is realistically available, but I like them both. I would rate Kessler higher, but harder to
Agreed.
get.
By the way, Cooper Flag just went number 1 to Dallas. Any thoughts on that, guys? Kevin?
Dallas is very lucky to get that pick from 11-1 odds, and Adam Silver definitely did not rig that. That's all I'll say.
Very interesting.
I wish he was on the Spurs. I'm not gonna lie. Actually, I don't wish he was on the Spurs just because I'm a Lakers fan, but I think it would have been better for the Spurs or the NBA if he was on the Spurs. That's all I have to say about that. But going to the Okongwu Kessler, just like Keoni was saying, Danny Ainge will not trade with us. I don't think he'll ever trade with us unless we overpay. I did think that Okongwu was more available after the Porzingis trade, but even so, now that they're going for it, I don't see them trading for, as I mentioned in our chat, I think they could use Okongwu and Porzingis like essentially Lively and Gafford and split their minutes, even though, as we've seen, Porzingis can't really stay healthy. I wish we had Kessler just because Kessler would be a perfect fit, and he has on a cheap deal, but I just view that as highly unlikely unless we somehow expand the trade, because the Mark Williams trade package won't be enough for Kessler. But I know this is unpopular, but if we somehow added Austin Reeves and got more pieces back, I think that would be perfect. Like an Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect for essentially like a Kessler Sexton type of thing with picks included on the Lakers side. But I just truly believe that both options really aren't a possibility. But Okongwu would be a great fit as well. It's just, I think that Atlanta, as Keoni said, since they're going for it, they most likely would want to keep that, and losing Capella, you kind of need the depth, and with Porzingis not being healthy. So both options would be amazing. I just don't think they're really realistic. So that's where I kind of stand on that.
Vijay?
Yeah, I think what they said about like Kessler and Okongwu's availability is the most important point. I think one thing that'll be interesting, like for Laker fans to watch in general tonight, will be whether Brooklyn, if he's available, obviously takes Malawach at 8. That could potentially make Claxton, like, if not more expendable than he already is, then more expendable. I think Phoenix is another team that's probably in the market for a big too. And I think this is kind of like, sometimes as Laker fans, we think that people only have to trade with us. And I think this is like one of the things about centers in general that are available. Almost every team is going to be looking for a center. So it's, especially with guys like Kessler and Okongwu, I'm not even sure the Lakers could put together the best package for guys like that. So I think watching what Brooklyn does with 8, probably monitoring the taxpayer MLE free agent market, that seems like it's more realistic in terms of the center addition the Lakers can make this offseason.
Let's spend a moment on Cooper Flag here. How do you guys see him impacting Dallas's season next year? Obviously, Kyrie is going to be out for majority of the season, if not the entire season. It remains to be seen how he rehabs and progresses. But on paper, I mean, that front line of Flag, PJ Washington, AD, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford, like that's a monster front line with 5 guys 6'9" and above. You still have Klay Thompson. I think Najee Marshall should not be playing point guard for them, but he impressed me with some of his on-ball skills and playmaking in a way that I don't think he had quite flashed earlier in his career. Looks like they're going after a point guard here, be it Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, D'Lo, recycling some of the old Laker favorites. Still got Dinwiddie. So like they're an interesting group where, especially if Kyrie can come back in maybe like February, that could be a dark horse team in the West that maybe they end up being a play-in team or like a low, 5 or 6 seed, something like that. But I think they could be really dangerous come playoff time. What do you guys think about Dallas and the fit of Flag? I'll start with you, VJ. Go reverse order.
Yeah, I think ironically the best fit for Flag in Dallas is with AD at the 5 and Flag at the 4. As ironic as that is, but
Poor AD.
Poor AD. He just can't catch a break. But I think Flag is so versatile that he can be like an awesome connecting piece for them, even as a rookie. And obviously the rumors about D'Lo are out there. I think Mark Stein reported on that. So it's a formidable group for sure. If Flag is as advertised, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a scout, but I was impressed with what I saw. I think he's super Swiss Army knife in a way that kind of reminds me of early Tatum, like with Boston. And I think that they can be good, obviously contingent on Kyrie and AD's health, which isn't the most reliable thing historically, but this is kind of a get out of jail free card for them with a guy that seems to have a super high floor and also very high upside. So
I completely agree with Vijay. I think Flag is a perfect fit on Dallas. Even before Dallas got the pick, I thought completely healthy. They are contenders, and them just getting Flag just adds a cherry on the top because that would just make their defense even better. Obviously, this is all dependent on their health because I assume that their starting 5 would be, and as Vijay said, that their best starting 5 would be AD at the 5, even though AD never wants to play the 5. But just thinking like Kyrie, Thompson, Flag, Washington, or Lively, and AD, that defense and that like team could essentially go against any team. And I view Flag probably being like a 12 to 14 point per game scorer with great defense. And my draft comp for Flag is actually like a baby AD essentially. He's only 18, and before going into his first season at Duke, I viewed Flag's one weakness is his 3-point shooting, and we saw at Duke essentially like he showed that he can shoot the 3 ball. So when Kyrie comes back independent, I do think obviously if they got D'Lo with because I think they only have 5.7 mil available. But if they got D'Lo just to take care of things and then go off of the bench once Kyrie comes back, I truly believe that they could beat any team in the West. And Flag just adds to that. And as a rookie and in the future, Flag's potential is pretty. I don't know what Flag's potential is, to be honest, just because people don't view him as like a LeBron-esque, Victor Wembanyama-esque, Zion Williamson-esque like player, but they view him as a number 2, number 3 type of player on a championship winning team. But I truly believe he could possibly be a number 1 on a championship winning team, depending on the roster construction. But as I mentioned, Dallas is very, very fortunate to have gotten Flag, and I just view that as like a great piece. And depending on the starting lineup, they can essentially dominate the West. And obviously, depending on health.
Worth mentioning that Dylan Harper has gone number 2 to San Antonio. So the draft is going chalk as expected. The top 2 picks, Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper.
Vijay will be next.
You're not this Vijay. Or maybe, I don't know. Are you going to Philly? No?
I'm good. I'm staying away from it. I'm good.
Keoni, what's your thoughts on Flag's fit and then also Dylan Harper?
So I think Flag, I see in the chat a lot of comparing him to AK-47. And
I like that.
To me, that's the floor though.
Yeah.
That's the absolute floor. Like, I think Cooper can be like a bigger Kawhi Leonard. If he maxes out his ceiling, right? I think he can be a number 1 player on a championship team. And why I do think like the optimal lineup for him would be him at power forward and AD at center. I wouldn't count him out at the small forward, AD at the 4, and Lively at the center. I mean, who's scoring at the rim on that front court? Like, he's an exceptionally talented player. The one thing maybe like his performance in clutch situations was a little dicey at Duke, but but I mean, I think that'll improve with time. It has with other players, and if he maxes out, I think he can be a star and a number one option on the championship team. As for Harper, I like Harper a lot. If I were the Spurs, I'd be looking maybe to trade Fox at the deadline. I like Harper, I like Castle, and I'd roll with that young core, or maybe use Fox to get a wing player that can shoot and play alongside those guys. The Spurs always they always seem to land on their feet. I'm surprised they didn't get the number one pick this year and land flag.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Harper. I think his ceiling is like a big Jalen Brunson or a Cade Cunningham. And at worst, he's his dad, like a lockdown defender who can run the offense and give you a little something. That the big key with him is his shooting and how's that going to progress, and cutting down on the turnovers and being a little more cautious with the ball when he's running the offense. But I like him a lot. I think those two for me were by far above everybody else in this draft.
I agree. Let's get into another super chat. This one from DGZ. Say Nico doesn't care what Mavs fans say. I mean, I'll say that now. Nico doesn't care what Mavs fans say. Austin and Shake Milton for Derek Lively and PJ or Max. How realistic or can it happen? I still think Dallas is going to try to trade Gafford instead of Lively. There's really no reason to trade Lively. I've made the point that if I'm ranking the long-term assets in Dallas, I still would put Lively as number 2 behind just Flag. Like, Lively's 21, and he was starting and closing games on a finals team, and I thought was better than Gafford for a majority of that playoff run. So, I've compared him to Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan, like that type of trajectory, which is a fringe all-star, third team All-NBA, potential Olympic team guy. I think they have that with this 21-year-old. So I don't see, if I'm Dallas, there's really no reason to trade Lively. I think you could argue from a value perspective, Austin for Lively and Max is probably, close. You could make the case, but I don't see Dallas seriously entertaining this. If it was like Gafford and PJ or Gafford and Max, maybe, and they plug in Austin as that starting guy who could play next to Kyrie once Kyrie's back, and you have the giant defensive front line to protect those two guys. But I think that's it. To me, doesn't really make sense on Dallas's end. But what do you think, Vijay?
I think, like you said, the value-wise, probably the kind of return you're looking for if you do want to trade Austin. You're looking for a high upside young guy that's cost controlled, and then a role player that excels in his role, someone like Max or PJ. I don't think the Lakers and the Mavs are going to make any trades for the foreseeable future, to be honest.
Agreed.
I just don't think
Gafford.
that's realistic. I mean, it potentially, if he's rerouted through a third team, it's possible, but I don't think that's likely. So I would say value-wise, awesome. In terms of how realistic it is, I would say not super realistic.
You guys have any other thoughts on that?
Honestly, as Vijay was saying, I don't think the Lakers and Dallas can trade for the next 5 years or however many years.
So as long as Nico's in charge.
As long as
Nico's gone,
so the next 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
But truly, I've always pondered the AR for basically Gafford / Lively and Max Christie, because I was very pissed off when Max Christie was traded to the Mavs, even though we got Luka. I think that would essentially fill both needs, because Dallas gets the point guard / shooting guard. fill in for Kyrie when he's injured. We get the center, plus we know Max Christie, what he is. Max typically like is a great 3-and-D player, and that would fill both needs. And the value's pretty close. I still think AR is being underrated just because of his playoff performance, because if he just did what he did in the regular season, people would be like, oh, because I view AR as, this might be crazy, but I think AR is better than Desmond Bane, in my opinion. So if we're trading him for Gafford and Christie, whereas we could get him for 4 first-round picks, but then again, it's needs for the Lakers. If we had Gafford,
I think the contract's the thing that
that is
kind of
true.
lowers Austin's value.
That is true, yeah, because he's going to sign an extension. But if we got Gafford and Christie, I genuinely think we'd win a championship. If we were fully healthy, everything went well, then we'd essentially have everything we needed. But it's not really realistic just because Patrick Dumont, he won't trade with us. Nico won't trade with us, just scared of looking like an embarrassment again. So
also quickly before you start, Keoni, Vijay Edgecombe went to Philly at number 3. So want to make sure we're addressing the picks as they happen, especially in the lottery. But Keoni, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think Nico's trading with Rob anytime soon. I floated a proposal in our chat, but it included DK and the first. Like he has to be if he ever did contemplate that, he'd have to be in a position where he could say, "Oh, I won the trade by getting the best player in the deal." But if you saw the two of them interact at Andre Iguodala's retirement ceremony up in Golden State, or when they honored him up in Golden State, that was a fraud. Like Nico wanted nothing to do with Rob. He like walked away from him as quickly as he possibly could. So I don't see that happening. As far as Edgecombe, he has upside, a lot of upside, tremendous athlete, defender. I'm not sold on his shooting potential. I have him lower on my big board. I had Trey Johnson third on my big board. I just think Trey Johnson, his shooting and his work ethic and his intangibles. So like the next here, I have him and Knuppel, Bailey, Edgecombe, Malawak, and I think of those 4, like Knuppel and Johnson are more likely to hit their ceilings, just because they're intangibles, as opposed to Edgecombe and Malawak and Bailey. Bailey's extremely talented. He's just got a lot going on around him right now.
Then a couple follow-ups here. One quickly, Sean Parker says, Jovan, can you do a meetup in New York next season? Yes, I can do a meetup in New York. That would be really fun. Then John Hendricks has been lighting the chat up, so we're going to get a couple of his here. He asks, what about Dalton for Lively? I'll just say quickly, Dalton's 3 years older than Lively, and Lively's already better than him. And again, was a starter/closer on a team that made the finals versus Dalton, who could not get in the rotation for a team that just lost in the first round. Now we could debate whether Dalton should have been in the rotation, but they're, I think, on 2 totally different trajectories and sides of value right now. So again, Lively, I think, is better and 3 years younger. So I do not think Dallas would do that. And then he notes, and we could get into Gafford quickly if you guys want to touch on him. But he notes they just extended Gafford, but they extended him within the extend and trade rules so that they can still trade him. So they can technically trade Gafford now, despite the extension not being official yet. But once it is official, they can still trade him. So they gave him the maximum extension that they could that would keep him trade eligible. So they can still trade him to the Lakers. And you could actually argue his value's higher now because you had that extension looming and it could have been at a higher number. But now it's going to be, I think, about 17 million that first year and go up then to like 19 or 20 and then go up to a little bit above 20, which, for a guy who's 27, I don't think is a ridiculous figure. So I think Gafford I still have him second on my center ranking big board. I have Nick Claxton first, Daniel Gafford second. Because of the reasons you guys laid out and I have laid out before, I'm skeptical of Dallas playing ball with the Lakers and potentially trading Gafford. I think it would have to be some type of overpay of Gabe, Dalton, and a first, something like that. And you're emptying the clip for Gafford, and I don't know that he's worth that. But I do think if there was a way to get Gafford and him be the Lakers starting center, we've seen him fit well with Luka. He's an really good shot blocker, good rim protector, good rebounder, good finisher. I think he would fit well. So for me, among who I qualify as the realistic guys, I have him number 2. Any Gafford thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I think the proof of concept being there is the most important point with that. Like, we know it can work for 20 to 24 minutes a game with Luka. I think, Jovan, you've brought this up before. The concern there is, do you want to go small with the DFS LeBron, Rui, if he's still there, kind of lineup in Gafford's when Gafford's not playing? Like, I think that's kind of not the way the Lakers should be thinking about addressing the center need this offseason. I don't think it should be, hey, we need a starting center to kind of appease Luka, appease the fan base. It should be kind of more geared towards changing the philosophy of prioritizing big men in this era in the NBA. And then I think one more point I wanted to get to, getting back to Edgecombe. I really like the fit next to Maxey with Edgecombe. I think Johnson makes a little bit more sense for a bad team right now. I think if you're Daryl and I don't know how certain you can be about this, but if you think you'll get 40 to 50 to 60 games out of Embiid, having McCain, Maxey, and then this guy that's kind of a foil to both of those guys in Edgecombe is a really interesting kind of team building concept.
Anything else on Gafford? Or are you guys ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on, but I agree with everything Vijay said.
Cool. Then we got another super chat from DGZ. Can LA get Lively? Who's better, Kessler or Lively? So we laid out why Lively's unrealistic for now, based on both Dallas and LA's history together and Lively's value. I would say this is tough because Kessler's 23, might be 24 now, but I think Kessler's unequivocally the better player right now. Who's going to be the better player long term? I mean, I kind of view Kessler as like Gobert 2.0, and if anything, I think he's a better finisher than Gobert and has a little bit better touch around the basket, and a little bit better mobility, at least relative to like where he's at in his NBA career. But long term, that's tough because I think Lively still has a lot of potential that at 21, we just don't know what his real ceiling is going to be. Depends how he develops offensively. But I would say Kessler probably has more value right now. I think the price to get Kessler would be higher than the price to get Lively, although I think it's relatively close.
I would honestly pick Kessler over Lively just because we've seen what Kessler can do on a bad team. Just imagine if he was on a team where he is the fourth option, and just like with Luka throwing up dimes up there, because we've seen what Lively looks like with Luka. I just can't even imagine what Kessler would look like with Luka. That would probably be really crazy. But as you're saying, like, we don't know Lively's potential essentially, and without Luka right now on the same team as Lively, we probably won't see Lively perfectly maximized unless he gets another great point guard like Luka. So I don't know. I would take Kessler in my opinion, but it's not too distant between the two.
Yeah, right now I think I would definitely go with Kessler. But I do like Lively's potential if he can eventually become that stretch five that Rich Paul was selling at draft time. I think he would exceed Kessler. Like, I think he has a higher ceiling than Kessler, but Kessler right now is the better player.
And worth noting, Colin Knippel just went number 4 to Charlotte. So I would say relatively chalk-ish. I think number 3 was sort of a pivot point with Edgecombe versus Trey Johnson, but right now it's going pretty much in line. We got a couple more here, then we'll be caught up with the super chats. Kevin Brown asks, thoughts on DK to the Nets for the 26th and 27th picks to be used on Maxine Reynaud and Ryan Kalkbrenner. I'll say, so I just had the episode with Mike Garcia, and I asked him, he's a draft expert, been covering the draft in depth for over 20 years, and I think he has a pretty good pulse on these things. I just asked, threw it out, if we're putting Dalton in this draft, where do you think he goes? How would you equate his value? And he said he thinks he'd be a lottery pick, a back end lottery pick in this draft. So if we are assessing loosely that value to Dalton in this draft, 26 and 27, I guess you could say is close to that. I would rather have, say, the 13th pick than the 26th and 27th pick. So I almost wonder if that's kind of selling low on Dalton. That also, you could argue, is maybe the high end for Dalton, and I don't know, maybe he's a little bit lower, but I would rather, if I'm trading Dalton, I would probably rather get a mid first. If you could get a lottery pick, that would be great. If you could get somewhere in 15 to 20, I would prefer that than 2 rookies. I don't I get the appeal of getting 2 first round picks, but I also think that the Lakers are in a spot where there is a little bit of urgency with next year's roster and how they're building it. So I think it would be nice to add a first, but I would prefer a guy in the 15 to 20 range if possible. So I would consider it. I don't know if that's enough for what the Lakers need. What do you think, Keoni?
I think it depends who's available at that point in the draft.
Sure.
I don't think that Nick Clifford will still be there at that point in the draft, but if Nick Clifford's there and then you can get either Renaud or the kid from Creighton, then I would do that. I'm high on Nick Clifford. I think he has Josh Hart, Max Christie potential. He rebounds well for a guard. I think he averaged almost 10 rebounds per game last season. He's shot it really well the last 2 years. He's a versatile defender. If he slips down to that range, I would definitely trade Dalton for Renaud and Clifford. And they're more ready to play right now too, as opposed to drafting a younger player who's going to need some development. I don't think, there was a lot of talk about drafting or getting a trade for the 8th pick and then drafting Malawak, but that's a 2 to 3 year project. And that's not where they are right now. They need people who can contribute right now.
Anything to add?
With DK, I like you were saying, I think he'd be drafted in the top 10 this year if he was available. So I'd probably want something higher than the 26th and 27th pick. I also believe that DK wasn't used as much as I would like his rookie year. I know his defensive lapses is the cause of that, and his lack of IQ on the floor is due to that. It's just we've seen the microwave scoring from DK, that it's Klay Thompson-esque, and I really hope that JJ trusts DK this year to be the 6th man, because what the Lakers really lacked the entire season is 6 points, our 6-man score, our bench scoring essentially. So if we could really give DK about 20 to 25 minutes and see how much scoring he could give us from the bench, because there were so many times when we'd have Gabe Vincent, Vando, and DFS just score total combined of 12 points, where we've seen DK score 37 against the Utah Jazz. So that potential of DK, I don't think is worth a 26th and 27th or 26th and 28th pick. So I'd really just like to see where DK could go if we gave him consistent playing time versus trading him away for picks. So that's kind of where I would go with that route. But yeah.
It's worth noting, Ace Bailey is going to Utah, and he looks thrilled about that.
His team's probably thrilled.
The Zach LaVine Minnesota hat.
Yeah. And as Mitch Potter says, the Nets have 5 firsts, so that's where they could stand to get off the 26 and 27 for DK. But if I'm trading DK to the Nets, I ideally want number 8. That would be great. But then if I'm getting the 2 picks that are a little bit later, I need 19. And then maybe 19 and 27, 19 and 26, something like that. But I think that's like the minimum I would want for DK.
I do think conceptually, though, the idea of turning somebody like DK into multiple tradable assets is a good one. I'm not sure we've seen the Lakers front office kind of operate with that kind of like guile creativity in the past. Yeah, creativity and guile in the past, but it's not out of the question. But I do think that some NBA teams have a little bit of hubris about picks. Like they think they can find a better guy than the player, even if it's a young player that they're acquiring in a trade. So like picks in general tend to be a little bit overvalued because of that. I'm not as high on DK as Kevin is, but I do think that he can be a kind of microwave scorer if he can figure out some of the stuff on the other end. And I think that that's really valuable on a team that needs floor spacers on offense with a heliocentric point guard. So I think that there's a role that he can fill, but I think he has to take steps. And I think the idea of kind of getting multiple assets for one when you're a little bit limited in terms of the assets you have is a good one.
It's fair. Then last super chat before we get into the rest of the chat. Appetizers and sushi, thank you for the super chat. Dallas's present and future is better than the Lakers? ? I would say their present is not better than the Lakers. I think we could argue that potentially if Kyrie was healthy, but I still think the Lakers, and assuming they can find a better starting center than Jackson Hayes and add another rotation level piece, whether it's doing some type of Rui for Wiggins trade or a different move, and then also adding someone with that taxpayer MLE. Like if they can add a little bit of depth and address some of the holes in the rotation, I think the Lakers should be better than Dallas going into this season. Now, long term, there's a lot of factors that go into this. Like how good is Cooper Flag? Is he that top 10, top 5 guy? How does Luka take care of himself? How does he age? What happens with Lively? Like if Cooper Flag and Derek Lively both hit their ceilings, then you could potentially argue down the road in a couple years or even a few years that Dallas has the brighter future at that point, depending on if the Lakers can find that second star to pair with Luka long term. But what do you guys think in terms of the present and future with Dallas versus LA?
I think LA is better suited right now. You could argue the future for Dallas, but like you said, that's unknown. I think if Dallas figures out their creator thing, that could change things. If the Lakers don't fill the holes they need to fill, if they don't get a point of attack defender, if they don't get a rim runner, if they can't improve the bench, then I was not a D'Lo fan, but D'Lo on this team actually fits really well. They have a lot of really good defenders to take up the slack where he lacks. So who's gonna fill their holes? I think really, but as is, I think you have LeBron, you have Luka, you have Austin. That's better to me right now. But the offseason isn't over yet. We'll see.
Funny enough, I think that Dallas, if we're considering both teams completely healthy and with the roster currently, I think Dallas is the better team presently and future. Just saying, with like if Kyrie's healthy, everyone's healthy, and we're doing a playoff series against the two, I most likely would pick Dallas just because of the Lakers' bench scoring issues, their lack of center. But this is obviously prior to any trades, anything that happens, and especially the addition of Cooper Flagg. I just think that Dallas is really big. They're going to be a great defensive team. And as well, offensively, I just don't really see that many holes in Dallas besides, and as well, as Keoni said, if they get D'Lo's familiarity with AD, and essentially I think D'Lo would have a chip on his shoulder against the Lakers, and just hold the team down until Kyrie gets back, and that would be a pretty good bench scoring option. I truly believe D'Lo would embrace that 6-man role on Dallas versus how he embraced it on the Lakers, but that does have to do with a bunch of drama in the past. And obviously Dallas's future with Cooper Flagg is pretty bright, but you could compare the Lakers' future with Luka is pretty bright as well. So I would say it's a toss-up, but I would lean towards Dallas on both sides. But this is obviously considering if both teams are completely healthy.
I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction, Kevin. I think the Lakers are better positioned now, and I think we have no evidence to say that Dallas could be better positioned in the future too. The Lakers have something that Dallas doesn't, and that's a number one option that you can win a championship with. And I think that really matters. If Cooper Flagg turns into that guy, then yeah, Dallas is going to be just as well positioned, I guess, in the near future. But I think when you have a guy like Luka, you have a chance every year, and you can't say that about any of Dallas's kind of main guys, top guys.
It's wild. We're an hour in and there's been 5 picks. Like this is kind of the issue with the NBA draft, for being honest. But next one here from Jay Spares. Yo, congrats on the move, Jovan. Random, but does everyone hate OKC now, or is it just me? They're like the perfect kid at school. Like, we get it. You did your homework. Also, NYC meetup LFG. So looks like we got a couple people in for the potential New York meetup. I'll say with OKC, for me, I mean, I try not to hold, like, there's always elements of fan bases online being a little annoying, and I try not to hold that against my perception of a team. I think my issue with OKC at times during this run was just, I felt like they were able to dictate the terms of physicality in their favor, like, very heavily, and it just felt like offensively they would get a lot of touch fouls, or there would be like a certain element of finesse and flopping that would benefit them. But then defensively, they would maul you, especially with Caruso and Cason Wallace and Lou Dort. And with Dort in particular, I think there would also be a healthy level of flopping on the defensive end with how he would just die on some screens. But it just felt like they were almost kind of, in a way, like the Morey Rockets. Like there was that perception that they were trying to game the system, and a lot of people didn't like that. They were like, we're only taking threes and layups. They had the year where they're like, we're not playing with a center, and people just didn't like that. It felt like they were trying to gamify the NBA, and it felt like at times with OKC, they were already so good. They had such great defensive talent. They have the MVP. They have all this depth, but then there would still be this like extra stuff where it would be Shea pushing off and like getting the foul call, or Dort flopping on a screen, or Wallace is grabbing TJ McConnell's hand in front of the ref and it's not being called, and then he just rips him, and it's a fast break opportunity the other way. So I think it was more so like, felt like at times they were kind of gamifying the foul game, where they were drawing a bunch of fouls on ticky-tack stuff, and then they would beat you up on the other end and not get fouls called against them. So I think that was maybe a little frustrating as an objective observer. But in terms of like, I know people go at them with like, they didn't drink during their celebration, or they do the group interviews, or like, whatever, that sometimes can be a little cringy, but that doesn't really bother me. I'm more so like, on the court, there were some things that were annoying, but I think that's partly, and then anytime there's a new thing where people are saying like, oh, greatest net rating of all time, is this going to be an all-time season? Is this an all-time team? Then people like to nitpick and look at, what they don't like about a situation. So I think they got propped up a lot, and anytime you get propped up, you're going to get torn down. But what do you guys think about OKC? Do you guys hate them? Do they rub you the wrong way? Like, how do you feel?
I'm not a fan of Dort or Wallace. I love Caruso, obviously, but so I coined this term 1990s Duke derangement syndrome. It's basically like a team has the reputation for being a defensively tough team, and so officials just let them get away with murder. And that's basically what you have in OKC, and it's annoying. I mean, Dort literally pushed Halliburton in the back, full on push, to create that turnover at the end of Game 4 that changed the game. And just their antics and their holding, and Shea does search those fouls on the other end, and he is of all the people they've described of being a foul merchant, he is one of the worst.
I think Luka and Brunson are just as bad, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Luka. I also love Shea, though. I think this is one of those things. Like, he's a throwback scorer. He kind of reminds me of a lot of the players I grew up with. And I think I want to clarify my point. Like, I personally don't have a problem with this concept of foul baiting. I think it's part of the game. It's always been part of the game. My favorite players growing up used to do it. The way they have to do it is different now because refereeing has evolved. But I think great players have always found a way to get to the free throw line, and Luka and Shea and Brunson find a way to get to the line and put points on the board for their team. So I really don't have a problem with that aspect of it. I do think some of the holding on deep, like the clip of Wallace holding McConnell's wrist, some of those things can be frustrating, but I think they play really hard. It's hard for me to root against them because it just seems like it seems like an AAU team, right? It's just a bunch of kids that are really, really good and they're playing really hard, and that's kind of hard to root against. But no, I mean, I think some of the stuff, especially with Shea, is a little bit overblown for sure, like the foul baiting stuff.
I personally don't hate OKC. I think it's just a combination of a lot of things that brings hate towards OKC. Like, it starts off with Shea's foul baiting. We all see it. But then again, as Vijay's saying, it's part of the game. Brunson once spoke on his podcast saying, it's smart, essentially. If you're not doing it, you're not, doing your best to win. So that, and essentially OKC's defense and how they play, I think they took advantage of how we all know the whistle does not get blown as much during the playoffs. So I think they understood that. So they basically amped it up. And we all saw the McConnell being held, and the ref was right there. And it's just I find that kind of crazy that you're just watching him and McConnell's literally this dude has his hand on me, and the ref just doesn't call it. Plus, they do have the thing where they're clearly the best team not clearly, but they are the best team in the NBA. It's pretty obvious. So, and they're going against the Pacers. So it's kind of like a David and Goliath thing. So we all want to root for David as the Pacers, but I pretty much I don't hate them, but I understand the hate towards them because no one wants, a lot of people don't want the overpowering team to win, especially if they're foul baiting, committing murder on defense, and we feel they're getting away with things. Whereas why would you give the better team the benefit of the doubt when it's clear that they're taking advantage of reffing in the playoffs? But I just view them as they are the better team in the NBA. They deserve to win, but some of their antics are kind of annoying. But I don't view them being young or them being kind of cringy as a negative. I kind of view that as a positive. When Chet was kind of almost blacked out, trying to mumble his words at the speech, I kind of found that funny, and how his teammates saved him. That kind of made me like OKC more, just because they seem like an actual camaraderie group. The camaraderie amongst them, they're hey, Caruso, none of us know how to pop champagne, can you help us? That seems that kind of humanizes them to me, instead of the foul baiting, like foul committing team that like is already better than everyone else. So why do they have to do these things to win? But then again, like everyone has their own opinion. I understand why people have those opinions towards them. It's just, yeah, exactly.
If I
I
could,
think the defense
sorry.
bothers me more personally than the
Mhm.
Shea foul. Like, you know, I think it's more like that sets the tone, and then you'll like, because it's not every possession with Shea either. Like, I don't think he's a grifter like prime James Harden or even I think Brunson is the worst right now in the league currently. I don't think he's at that level, but it'll just be like 3 or 4 straight possessions where they hack someone, it turns into a fast break, and then it'll be the cherry on top is like Shea then gets like a touch foul on a jumper, and you're like, how is this like fair at all? Just as an objective third party. But what were you gonna say, Vijay?
Yeah, I think the kind of the thought process behind being so physical on defense is if you do something every possession, they can't call it every possession. And I might sound like a Warriors hater, but I think the Warriors figured this out with moving screens in the mid 2010s too. If you do it every play, they're not going to call it every play, and every team can do that with something. So I don't hate them for kind of exploiting referee tendencies in that way. I do think it's unfair, and I would like to see games officiated the way we all want them to be officiated. But I think that the smart teams have figured out small things like this to do over the years. So it's not something I view as like crazy or anything.
Trey Johnson at number 6 to Washington, Jeremiah Fears number 7 to New Orleans. So we are catching up with the last couple of picks. Mitch Potter says RIP to Trey Johnson's career. And then he follows up, I don't think Trey Johnson got picked by Washington so much as he got sentenced to NBA purgatory. He's not wrong. Like, I think Washington has to shake off that reputation before we can treat them as non. Like, there's a few teams, Washington, Charlotte. Yeah. I mean, Utah's kind of been like that too the last few years. Let's see. Any other... This one to me, Joey Lucco. How about Reeves into Detroit's cap space for a couple firsts and a ton of seconds? They have like 18. It's not a huge return, but opens up full MLE for us to use. So this has been some of my issue, and I'm not picking on you, Joey, but some of my issue with some of the Reeves fake trades that I've seen, just because if you, let's entertain this for a second. Like, sure, a couple firsts for Austin, depending on the types of first, and a ton of seconds that, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Let's just say it's like 2 firsts and 4 seconds. It sounds like a great haul. The issue is now you're just getting Austin off the Lakers, and you are replacing him with a taxpayer or non-taxpayer MLE player. And no one that's going to be available for the non-taxpayer MLE is as good as Austin, regardless of fit, regardless of, who are, like, there's no one in that range is like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is not better than Austin. You could argue he's a better fit with what the Lakers need next to Luka and LeBron, but like Austin is a better player. He's a more valuable player. So this is where I think sometimes they're like, let's just trade Austin to trade Austin. I have a bit of an issue with it because I think in this case, even if you got some player, a Naz Reid, a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, someone like taking a slight discount for the full MLE, they're still worse than Austin, and I think the Lakers take a step back. But do you guys have any thoughts on this, or even just like the Austin discourse? I know Keoni is I don't want to say an Austin. I don't want to mischaracterize you as an Austin hater, but I think you're more open to trading Austin than at least I think I am.
Yeah, I know Vijay thinks I hate Austin, but I don't. I just think he does not fit on this roster with Luka here now. You know, if they had gotten Giannis instead of Luka, then I'm all for keeping Austin. I think he fits better with Giannis than he does with Luka. It's just they don't have assets. Their best asset is Austin, but also you have to find the right partner, and I don't know that partner is out there. I thought Houston was an interesting place because the assets they could get, you could flip and fill all the holes. You could fill the point of attack next to Luka. You could fill the rim running, rim protector that they need, and you could improve the bench. But that's off the table now, really, because they had KD. I don't see the natural trade partner, especially with Atlanta going for it. The people who have like the pieces that I think would fit best on this team going for it. I just don't. I don't. It's a hard situation for the Lakers because I don't see how they can really get better until some things figure themselves out during the season. So I think Austin, maybe you. And I hate doing this because they do this every year. They wait to the deadline to see, but like I think at this point, Austin, like moving Austin, might be better at the deadline. But then that becomes hard because he can walk like at the end of the season in free agency. So what do you get back from him? I think it's just a tough spot. But if you could move him, ideally, I think that's the piece to move to fill all the holes. You're not going to fill all the holes with just Dalton in the first and Rui.
I think the one thing. Oh yeah,
I
sorry.
just Yegor Demina went to
Yeah.
Brooklyn at number 8.
That's a reach. Seems to me like it's a reach at least.
Yeah, that is a reach.
Wow.
I think the one thing I'd say like about the talent discrepancy between Austin and an MLE guy, it's to me way bigger than the talent discrepancy, if it even exists, between a guy like Rui and Andrew Wiggins. And I think that when you're kind of prioritizing fit over talent for building a contender, making that kind of lateral talent move from Rui to Wiggins to improve the fit is okay. Doing that and getting rid of a guy that averages 20 points a game is a mistake and another way to mismanage your assets to me.
I completely agree. For Austin, we need something that makes us better. The picks, you never know what we can do with the picks. And like Austin, again, like all this trade discourse with Austin, I don't believe would be happening because right before this happened, or right before the playoff series, we were having discussions, is Austin Reeves the best third option in the league? And then a bad 2 weeks when he had an injury, change it to, is he the best third option, to what can we get for him? So, but then again, there is a fit issue with him, LeBron, and Luka. But then again, if we look at it long term, like LeBron's not going to be on the roster forever. And Austin and Luka as the two ball handlers, it works. But right now, it might not work. It's depending on the package that you would get for him. We really need, like, Austin is a 20-point per game scorer, so we can't trade him away for something that isn't that value. And that value, I believe, is at least 4 first-round picks or something that makes us a contender like Gafford and Maxey, like something along those lines.
I want to go on record.
Funkology says if someone slips on a banana peel, you're going to wish you had Austin.
Agreed.
I want to go on record, though. I was pro trading Austin at the deadline if you could get like Dyson Daniels in a Kwangu package. But it's not Austin.
You're saying this past deadline?
Yeah, it's not Austin. It's the construction of the roster and how he fits into it.
Agreed.
What do you guys think? Because a counterpoint I've made with trading Austin has been looking at I think there's been like 3 general players that have succeeded next to Luka. If you look at the 2 deep playoff runs, there's been the athletic, rim running, lob threat center, which the first run was actually Dwight Powell. And then they also played some Maxey at the 5, some DFS at the 5. So that was kind of a combo of like a rim runner and also a stretch big. Then 2024 finals run, it's Lively and Gafford. That's that more traditional rim runner, athletic, above the rim, shot blocking, rebounder. Then you have the secondary scorer ball handler where you have Jalen Brunson, who we now know him as this back end MVP ballot, back end first team All NBA candidate guy, but he was not that final year in Dallas. He was a good player, and he was clearly a hidden gem to the extent of like no one viewed him as a future star necessarily, but good player, but not what he was now. And then of course Kyrie, who is Kyrie, but that's like that secondary ball handler scorer. Spencer Dinwiddie has been a lesser version of this that is also fit next to Luka. Then, of course, you have more of the DFS, PJ Washington, Rui, more of like the big 3-and-D wings that if you can shoot high 30s, low 40s, and you could defend multiple positions, like that's the type of player that fits well next to Luka. So when looking at how the Lakers build their roster, what do you guys think about Austin potentially filling that Jalen Brunson or Kyrie role? And I think this version of Austin is arguably better than that version of Jalen Brunson. He's not as good as Kyrie, of course. But then I would also argue that he's 6'5". Jalen Brunson's 6 foot, maybe 6'1". Kyrie's 6'3". And I think Austin's defense, for as much flack as he gets, is still better than both of those players. So if we want to say he's in between them offensively and better than them defensively, I think there's a path. You have to be careful with how you build the rest of the roster. You have to nail the center. You have to nail the 3-and-D perimeter guys. But I do think there's a path for Austin and Luka to work. And I think we saw it at times, especially during the stretch LeBron was out. But what do you guys think about him potentially filling in that Brunson / Kyrie role as like that secondary ball handler, shot creator who can lead the offense when Luka's off the floor?
I think that's like a perfect example of what he can be. Like as you said, he's not as good as Kyrie, but I just feel as though like when Luka's off the floor, Austin, we've seen he can create, he can score, he can kind of manipulate defenses to his liking, he can foul bait. He's a really skilled player. As we've mentioned, like he's very valuable, and as Keoni said, it's just the fit with LeBron, Luka, and him. I lean on the side of keeping him just because I truly believe if he were to go to another team that doesn't have a big star, he could easily be like a 25 point per game scorer. And like we've seen his progression throughout the years, like first year, second year, third year, he's always improved. So like if you were to tell me that Austin Reeves eventually becomes Jalen Brunson with like averages and the scoring, I wouldn't be surprised. And like if we trade him away, he could also be one of those Lakers that we always talk about years later, like a Zubac, like a KCP, or a Caruso. And that would be another annoying thing to think about. Like, oh, there's Austin Reeves. Like I know there's not a world where Austin is an MVP votes, but like there could be a world where he's an MVP candidate if he takes that Jalen Brunson level-esque leap. But that would be hard to be done with Luka on the team. But I don't know. Your thoughts, guys?
Keoni, what do you think about the Brunson Kyrie comparison?
I think it works in the regular season, but if you look at his playoff history, like he had the breakout year with the I'm Me Memphis series and then the Golden State series, and he was pretty good in the Denver series. But then the second year he regressed in the playoffs, and then this is the third straight year where he's gotten worse in the playoffs. I mean, this year was obviously the worst, much worse than last year. But there is a regression if you look at his efficiency and his numbers in the playoffs over the last 3 years. I don't know that that's a championship winning combination, the two of them. And I think the thing with the Lakers is it's not Phoenix, it's not other teams. Like you have to be going to win the championship every year. And I don't think he's the number 2 guy on a championship team.
I think, I think the kind of rebuttal I'd have to that is as much as we talk about playoff risers and playoff droppers, it's important to contextualize the sample size. Like, even if you look at this regression, it's a 10-game regression. I'm not sure I'm ready to write someone with his skill set and his kind of intangibles off in the playoffs because of last season, where he wasn't great, especially catch and shooting against Denver, and this Minnesota series where he was injured, in addition to missing a lot of catch and shoot looks. But I think that having a secondary creator with a guy like Luka is really, really important. And I think asking LeBron to be that guy and asking, like, that's a lot to ask of LeBron if there's no kind of third creator, tertiary creator, because you need LeBron to play 70, 75 games in order to maximize the Lakers at that point. And I think it makes a lot, like, the build makes a lot more sense with someone like Wiggins at the 3 who can guard the point of attack, or another like a Nickeil Alexander-Walker who can shore up some of these perimeter weaknesses that they have, because like we've talked about, Rui, Braun, DFS, Luka, all kind of guard forwards. And you're putting a lot on Austin, asking him to take the toughest point of attack matchup and give you the same offensive production that he gives you in the regular season. I think it's a little bit of an unfair burden on someone that's supposed to be the third best player on your team.
One thing I'll push back on too is that I don't think his playoff series against Denver was as bad as I'm not saying you're characterizing it this way, Keoni, but I know that that's been like a popular thing, because I've noted the non-Minnesota series I think have been much better than the Minnesota series. But just looking at like the advanced numbers quickly, like 15.4 PER his first playoff run in 2023, and 18 PER against Denver last season, and then 9 this past season against Minnesota. Yeah, that's awful. But win shares per 48 went up. Box plus minus went up. VORP was down, but that is to some extent, kind of related to, well, I guess that, I mean, that one's whatever. But I think like his numbers were largely in line. I think it's more of like a plateau than a regression from playoff run 1 to 2, if you want to argue that. But there are some of his numbers that are better from that first postseason run to the second, on like a per 100 possession and per 36 basis. His scoring went up. The 2-point percentage went up by a lot actually against Denver. Is really his 3-point percentage that nosedived his true shooting and field goal percentage overall. So like he got to the free throw line more. Like I think there were things that he did better. And to Vijay's point, it was a small sample size in either direction. So I'm not even saying he like had a better playoff performance necessarily. I just think it wasn't as much of a regression. Now the area he really struggled was the catch and shoot 3-point shooting. And that is where I made this point that like Austin needs to be a better catch and shoot guy if he's going to fit next to Luka. Like the key distinction between, I mentioned Jalen Brunson and Kyrie. Both guys shot 40+% during those playoff runs on catch and shoot threes. Austin has now been at under 30% in back-to-back playoff series. That is the red flag for me of if he cannot be a more consistent catch and shoot guy, I take a step back and I do say maybe there's a fit limitation there. But if he can be more of the guy he's been in the regular season and who he was in that 2023 run as a shooter, I do think that there is the potential there for that to fit. But to your Keoni's point though, like I don't think this is like the 2-man pairing. You still need a guy better than Austin, and maybe even another guy. Like if you're thinking about like a perfect build, maybe he's your 4th best guy. But I think I do think there's a path to it working. You do just got to like nail the other 3 guys.
That's a lot to ask from Rob.
Yeah. And then I see we got. So I appreciate you, Young Lido. Young Lido he's the responsible adult in the room. He's been keeping us, up to date with the picks. So Colin Murray Boyles to the Raptors. Then we had Mitch Potter asking if the Lakers should call up Houston and offer Dalton and 55 for the 10th pick. I mean,
That's
you could get
Phoenix's pick, right?
Malawach or
Well, that's Phoenix's pick, right?
yeah, that they, yeah.
I think Phoenix getting a center here is not the worst thing, though, because it does take them out of the center market
True.
for the offseason. So,
Yeah.
But how about those last 2 picks, man? Those are puzzling picks. Like,
yeah.
Crazy.
I think Vicini had Murray Boyles.
Malawach is off.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
There you go. Yeah. Yep.
I think Vicini had Murray Boyles mocked to Toronto. Ooh, there you go.
But
Trade. Shams just reported a trade. Mark Williams,
okay.
Phoenix.
Let's bring it up. They don't
Mark
learn.
Williams to Phoenix.
I wish we had Mark Williams.
Number 29 pick and a 2029 first. Here, I will share my screen. Let's bring this up. One sec.
well, they're going to be selling centers now, right? They got Richards.
Please trade us
Williams,
Richards. Please trade us Richards.
and Malawach now.
There you go, Vijay. You're back. You're back on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so reaction to this. This is. We don't know if there's any protections yet with the pick. Sometimes that's like the follow-up tweet, but I mean that's less than the Lakers gave up. That's a worse pick than Dalton was, and we've already established that Dalton's worth more than the number 29 pick in this first round. And then 2029 future first. I just the element of this that I don't really. You could I guess argue that Phoenix is thinking more future focus with this trade, but I'm like they're not anything more than like a back end play-in team at best. I think that's even like optimistic with how deep the West is right now. Like, is Phoenix better than? I mean, we could just go through it quickly, but I mean, I don't think they're better than the Thunder. I don't think they're better than the Rockets, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, even this version of the Grizzlies.
The Mavs.
And then the Kings and Mavs finish ahead of them. And even look at the teams behind them, like Portland just got Drew Holiday, San Antonio with Wemby, ending the season early was 2 wins fewer than Phoenix. I think a healthy San Antonio is ahead of them. And then New Orleans and Utah, I guess you could sell me on being worse, but like they're maybe like the 11th or 12th best team in the West. I don't think that like this is an interesting one to give up. They're not giving up like an insane amount, but they are giving up essentially 2 firsts for Mark Williams.
Yeah, I think trading a future first when your future isn't the brightest for Mark Williams and then drafting Malawach feels a little bit. Obviously, the value of first-round picks in the NBA and the NFL isn't the same. It feels a little bit like what Atlanta did when they signed Cousins and drafted Penix. Like, I don't understand why you're using this kind of mid-lottery capital on a guy like Malawach that has upside and then trading for a guy to play over him. It doesn't make the most sense to me.
Maybe like depth and injury-wise, just because Mark Williams is always injured and who knows. But I agree with you. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, they also still have Nick Richards, which I wonder if this makes him what's
available. If we got Nick Richards, I was kind of I wanted Nick Richards to be on the Lakers before he was traded from Charlotte to Phoenix, and then he was pretty good for Phoenix, and that might make him available for us. So
what's funny too is I brought it up to Mike Garcia. I saw some I saw some Mark Williams in Malawach's game. I think Malawach is more athletic and has a bit of a higher motor, but I also then contend that Mark Williams is more skilled offensively.
Yeah, and then then with Toronto, BJ, what I was saying more, not the talent reach at that point, but like you already have Scotty Barnes, so I don't understand like getting a hub power forward when you already have a better version of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, look, Ishbia said he was going to take a step back with how involved he was. And this has like, I want to be a playoff team next year written all over it. I do like Malawach and Mark Williams is an interesting combo. You can't say, but yeah, I mean, you got to probably flip Nick Richards at this point. He's got a $5 million expiring. So Lakers could flip Shake for that. They get off a couple million.
Instantly become our starter.
I'm not a big Nick. I'm not. I wouldn't mind Nick Richards as a backup center. I would not want him as the starting center.
I would just say that Nick, he would be our best center on our roster right now.
That's a low bar. That's a low bar. But
Alex Glenn?
I do think that I think Jovan, you said that this is less than the Lakers gave up. I think the lack of clarity about what Phoenix is going to be in 2029, I'm not sure if it's less than what the Lakers gave up practically, because the 29 Phoenix pick might actually be really good.
It might be protected.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's
because like that's way too far out for no protections. Because like if Phoenix was bad back then.
Lakers gave up 2031, which I guess you could argue you don't know where the Lakers are going to be in 2031. Theoretically, with Luka, that pick is better. But yeah, 2029 Phoenix. I mean, I just don't know if I think 29 is fine. Like 29 plus something is fine, but I don't know if Mark Williams is worth that like future first personally.
If Mark Williams is, let's say he has a healthy career, then he's worth it in my opinion. But then again, that's a big what if, essentially.
Mitch Potter asks, if Mark Williams goes for this, what's Nick Claxton's value?
You got to think about his contract, though.
Yeah, I think he's better. So I think, but to your point, like Mark Williams is still on the rookie deal and he's a bit more cost controlled. I think Claxton's like notably better in my opinion. I mean, this is like, I think Claxton, for the Lakers to do it, you probably got to do DK in the first, which that's up to you if you view that as worth it. I think I would, like at gunpoint.
I would, but
metaphorical gunpoint.
You'd have to include, wouldn't you have to include like Rui and for
you don't have to do Rui. That's the other thing I like. You could do
like Gabe.
You could do Gabe, Maxey, and Dalton gets you there financially.
I would do that then. Yeah,
because
and Claxton would fit really well. See, if we had Claxton without giving up Rui, I genuinely believe that would put us in contender. Like we'd be fine then. I wouldn't really be worried.
And a couple things that I like about Claxton that I don't think get talked about enough is like he's got a better handle than people realize for that's like you think like we think of him often in that rim running, just screen, roll, lob threat, but he can attack off the dribble. He can like fake DHO, get to the rim. Defensively, he's very versatile. I think the post defense is my biggest concern with him is just how like watching some of his post, like the numbers aren't that bad, but I've been watching some synergy on him and it's not great. He can be moved from his spot by some of the bigger guys, but he does have the length to contest. So look, you're not going to find the perfect center. That's just like the perfect centers aren't going to be available for the Lakers realistically. Even if it's a Kessler, then you have a foot speed issue a little bit defensively. And like you kind of have to play more drop coverage or more conventional with the Kessler. So like every center is going to have their drawback, but I really like Claxton. And if it doesn't cost you Rui, then I like that.
Portland also just traded 11 to Memphis.
Yeah, if there's trades, just feel free to interrupt. And
I like Coward for Memphis.
Feels like another Jalen Wells type wing. They're just going to get the best out of.
Yeah.
Especially after trading Bane too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what Phoenix is doing.
It just seems like they don't want to like tank because they don't have their picks. So
that's a good counterpoint. Thank you for super chat, Young Claire. Who do you think LAL lands to play center? I've made this point that I think if they trade for someone, it's my betting favorite would be Claxton. If they sign someone, which I think is the more likely route as of right now, it'd be Capella. So if I was setting the Vegas odds, I'd put Clint Capella number 1. I know that's not what fans want to hear. And it feels like that should be like the floor option. I don't think they should add anybody worse than Capella to start. Even then, I think Capella is more of like a solid backup. But I think he's got a little bit left in the tank, more than people maybe realize. But he's not, the ideal starter. What do you guys think in terms of like looking at the realistic options? Who do you feel? In Brook Lopez, Al Horford,
I think those are too old. I would hope we would trade just because like those who are available out there, like Capella. I was really hoping for Adams before he signed that extension, because if we had Adams and Capella, I'd be more comfortable. I'd be okay if we stuck with that, but I don't know.
I do think that the Capella, Horford, Lopez trio, I think one of those three is the most likely starter next season. I think if you're making a trade, there should be a little bit more willingness to part with Rui for a center. I think a lot of the discourse around Rui has been trading him for a wing, which I think makes a ton of sense. But there's a couple, I think, options in that mid-tier salary range for centers as well that I think they could look at. Gafford obviously being the most kind of talked about one, and like we talked about, that's probably most likely to happen through a third team. But I think, the trio of Lopez, Horford, and Capella, one of those three, I would put money on being the starter on opening night.
Unfortunately, I agree.
Keoni looks sad.
Yeah, that's rough. I unfortunately have to agree that it's likely going to end up being one of them. I mean, I'm okay with Capella as a backup. I don't even know if I like Brook Lopez as a backup. He's so old. Horford, maybe. He's pretty good on defense this last year, especially against the Lakers as a backup.
Locked up LeBron and Luka that night.
But yeah, no, that's. I really hope Atlanta takes a nosedive and they make the former Trojan for Vijay and Jovan available to the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean so I like this one from inside. The one I've been coming more around to, honestly, both Blazers bigs. My issue with DeAndre Ayton, well, there are several issues with DeAndre Ayton, but I think it's more so the salary of once you get past like the high 20s, it's just hard for LA to salary match. And so in a DeAndre Ayton trade, you probably have to give up Rui. And it's just tough for me to, like, if it's Rui, Gabe, and Maxi Kleba, now you're giving up 2 of your top 7. You're giving up a starter. Obviously, Ayton's going to slot in as the starting 5. I know Kevin isn't probably going to agree, but like I think if it was just like Rui for Ayton, I would consider that. But when you factor in like the additional salary and then also the opportunity cost of not necessarily being able to go get that starting wing because you're investing so much of your tradable salary into Ayton, and then also having some question marks with Ayton on the side, it's like that just to me is a tough. Robert Williams I like, and Robert Williams to me is the one where it's like if you can if you are stuck with, you got the 5.7, you can only get Adams, you can only get Horford, you can only, I mean, not Adams, Capella, Horford, Lopez. If you could flip Gabe or Maxey for a Robert Williams and take more of that upside swing, like I think if Robert Williams is healthy, I think he's better than a lot of the guys we're talking about. It's just he's never healthy. But if it's like Robert Williams and Capella, I like that more than the alternative of like Capella and a vet minimum big, for example. So it's all like there's an opportunity cost everywhere with this, but Ayton, I've come more around to in theory. I just think the price is what's really hard, like just the salary matching.
I completely agree. Like on this is surprising, but if Ayton was making less money, like let's say 20 to 25, I would do Ayton for Rui, essentially straight up. But also you have to, I'm worried about Ayton's motor, but then again, if he's in LA, he might increase that motor since he is more seen as an LA player. Time Lord would be great. It's just Time Lord hasn't been healthy in 3 years, and like season after season after season, he proves again like he can't stay on the floor. So if we did get Time Lord, I would need a reliable center, like a very like a backup center that I'm willing to be okay with, essentially being a starter. So like if it was Time Lord and Capella, that could be something interesting, but I don't know. The options out there aren't the best. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I just think Aiden's salary makes him prohibitive. But did you guys see Crandus's tweets about Aiden compared to like Gafford and Claxton and stuff? What do you guys think?
I just, it doesn't pass the eye test for me. I think it's like one of those situations where I kind of disagree with the numbers, and just watching some film on all the centers, I still think Gafford and Claxton pop a bit more on film for what the Lakers specifically need. And also, I think there's just this element with Ayton where if it's 2021 Ayton, sure, like that guy was like guarding, that was like some of the best defense we saw individually against Jokic. I think like period individually, like he and now granted he was playing with like G League guys, and because Murray was out, and I think Gordon might have been out too or something like that, but I thought he defended him well, and then he was a big part of them getting to the finals, but he has not been that same player since then. So I like Crandus's tweet kind of sparked a little interest, and since then I've been doing some more homework on it, but I don't know. It's really just he's making $35 million. That's really tough to match.
Also, go ahead, Keoni.
I got another question, especially for you, Vijay. What do you guys think about Clowney? If we can get Claxton and Clowney for DK in the first, would that make it better for you?
I mean, I personally would be all for trading DK in the first for Claxton with whatever expirings you have to pay for it, even if you don't get Clowney. I don't know if Sharp is a restricted free agent, but he brings a different, I feel like we've talked about this before, he brings a different look than Claxton. I think I would prefer that. I think the other interesting situation, Orlando has two quality backup centers. Obviously, Wagner's coming off the torn ACL, but Goga and Mo, those guys are like Inside mentioned here. Those guys are worth looking at, but it's tough to kind of find these backups that you want to elevate their role and expect a ton from them. So I think tempering expectations on who starts at center is a good practice to start exercising.
I got to be honest, I'm a big Mo fan, but Mo's kind of untradeable just because of Franz. Mo, I love Mo even since he was on the Lakers. Thought we should have kept him. Didn't play him enough with Zubox. But Go might be a good option. And you guys mentioning if we got Claxton and Sharp, I think that would be the perfect trade essentially, because we essentially fill our starting center and our backup center needs. And those two looks would be like not that bad. That would be a pretty good like center duo right there.
So a couple of updates here. We got Noah Asenge going to Chicago at number 12. And then we have a trade here. Hawks are trading number 13 to New Orleans for 23 and an unprotected 2026 first. Most favorable of New Orleans and Milwaukee per Shams. And New Orleans is taking Derek Queen at number 13. So another center off the board for the Lakers in terms of potentially trading up for a center in like the late lottery, mid first.
Sorber's probably Sorber, and then the Behringer. Those two are the ones that are left that are projected in this range, right?
Yeah.
I actually like Sorber better than Queen.
Yeah.
Queen is definitely polarizing, so I was definitely curious what you guys thought about him.
All right. Then this is going back to previous conversation, but I missed the super chat. I apologize, Ray. I think this was during our Austin discussion. He said Reeves and Luka is too much of a defensive liability. So this is, I guess, like the counterpoint to my stuff is like, it's just, there's a limitation there, but right. Like I think it's fair to say that if you are doing an Austin Luka pairing, you need to nail the other three guys, which we said earlier was challenging to say the least.
Very hard, especially if LeBron is his age and Rui.
I think that pairing works if your front court is a Flag, AD, and
Also, speaking of another questionable future pick trade, New Orleans traded their 2026 first unprotected. It's a swap best of New Orleans and Milwaukee. That's an interesting decision too. Maybe they're anticipating like a Zion comeback season. I'm not quite sure why they'd part with that.
Yeah, because you're giving up. I mean, if Giannis gets traded, then that pick from Milwaukee gets valuable. I mean, that's a big pick. That could be a lottery pick next year, depending on what happens with Giannis.
I really like how Atlanta's approached this offseason so far. I think
Atlanta's crushing it.
The biggest winner of the offseason so far.
Houston so far.
I would definitely say Houston.
Yeah, but is it really Houston or is it Kevin Durant just basically making his way into Houston?
Well, let's get into it. So I think there had some topics here that I want to touch on, and we could talk about biggest offseason winner for right now. I mean, I think it's Houston, and I think it's the KD trade, which to me, not giving up. Windhorst said like any of their top 5 assets or player assets. I don't know if I'd go that far with Jalen Green, but not giving up Jabari, not giving up Reed Shepherd, not giving up Tari Eason, not giving up Cam Whitmore, not giving up Şengün. It was impressive. Obviously, Amen, I think, is just not on the table in those discussions, but I thought they gave up 2 expendable, relatively expendable. Dylan Brooks to me is like one of the tougher players in the league, kind of similar to Pat Beverly, where you see the value from like the defense, the culture. They're a tone setter, they're physical, they play with a certain edge, but at the same time, it could be a bit destructive, as we've seen with Brooks at times. I also think he would shoot Houston out of games for stretches where it's just like this 3-minute stretch. I'm calling my own name for the next 5 possessions, and he'll go 1 for 5, and you're like, dude, like, what are you doing? So I thought they nailed the KD trade. Then the Fred VanVleet thing today, I thought was, or I forget if it was yesterday or today, but that was, I thought, very smart on their part. They reject his team option for the 44.9, expiring deal for next year, and they spread it over 2 years and give him an additional $6 million. So that's a 2-year, $25 million per year deal. And then also the Steven Adams extension, which I thought was a little rich in totality, but I think it's like fine value. But they're going into next year with Şengün, KD, Jabari, Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, and then a bench of, Whitmore, Shepherd, Adams, still have Tari Eason, and they still have the assets to go get another star or another major piece if they so choose. They could go get a Jaylen Brown or a Derek White if Boston, if they can reach Boston's price. So they're in a really good spot. I think Houston, it's funny to say this about the team that finished with the second best record in the West, but like they could be the second best team in the West next season, I think.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think they've just been nailing it this offseason. They could go get Giannis. They still have enough
They could
bullets
go
in the
get
gun
Giannis.
to go get Giannis. That's the crazy part.
That's crazy.
And
But
Amen's only going up. So I mean,
Amen's gonna be a star.
I would think they're definitively, to me, the second best team in the West going in.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they won it all next year. Like, if everyone's clicking on all cylinders, you saw the Pacers almost beat OKC. Like, why can't Houston beat OKC in like the Western Conference Finals? But I'll
say the one thing I see with this team that could be a bit of an issue is I still think, kind of similar to New York, Şengün and Fred VanVleet are the two entry points, I think, into their defense. And like with New York, it was Brunson and Towns. And even with having Bridges and Hart and OG Anunoby, it was like those two guys just presented so many problems for their defense in a playoff setting that I guess with Houston, you don't have to rely on VanVleet. You can bench him, and we saw them go away from him at times. Şengün is a trickier one because I think he's clearly their second best player. Maybe Amen Thompson surpasses him next season, but like as of right now, he's their second best player. So it's like that one's a little trickier. And Adams also has some mobility limitations. So I guess if I wanted to play devil's advocate to Houston, like I still think having a 6-foot guard and a center with some defensive limitations is a little problematic, but that's more of like the glass half empty look at them.
I agree. I still think they could overcome that with their like just basically out offense anyone, but that's what the Knicks were basically supposed to do, and their flaws were shown with Brunson and Cat. But then again, like Houston's bench is crazy compared to the Knicks bench. Like it doesn't even like hold a candle, and like with Eason, Thompson, their defense, they're banshees basically, which is a great asset for them. And I don't know, but you're right on the Fred VanVleet and even Reed Shepherd. I know he didn't play that much like as a bench. Like they're both small guards, so they both can't defend. And Şengün is like a small center. Like honestly, like how I don't even know how tall he is. Probably like 6. I wouldn't even want to guess, but yeah, their defense might be
6'10".
I was gonna say 6'10". Yeah, but
Durant's 7 foot though, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go. That adds to it. Durant's going to play small forward for the first time in so long as well.
I think they might.
Just to add here quickly, I thought this was of note. So the 2029 first is the least favorable of Cleveland, Utah, and Minnesota, which means it's probably going to be Cleveland. So it's going to be – well, actually, sorry, I take that back because it's 2029. We don't know where these teams are going to be then, but like – Cleveland and Minnesota 4 years from now should theoretically still be solid. You could have Mobley and Mitchell there in Cleveland, Ant in Minnesota. Again, it's too far out to really know where these teams are at. But I would say like that projects to probably be a pick in the 20s as things stand. So that makes it a little better now that we have the context of it's not Phoenix's pick, but yeah, just wanted to provide that context.
Yeah, I think one of my potential concerns with Houston, I mean, I don't want to get too like first takey with it, but I think one of the
Let's do it.
One of the positives of bringing VanVleet back is the leadership. But that's been a concern on Durant teams post Golden State, like not having a guy that kind of steers the direction of the team. And maybe Amen can grow into being that guy. And maybe Durant, in a situation that he likes more, better for him, feels kind of more obligated to do that. I'm not 100% sold on their spacing, even with Durant. You have Amen in there. Şengün can't really shoot it. Jabari and Durant can definitely shoot it. Van Vliet is not
Van Vliet's
the most efficient guy. I think that they can make games really mucky, and then they have a late game scorer in Durant now, which is a recipe for sure. I'm not sure whether they can out kind of grit and grind Oklahoma City, and that would be kind of a matchup of similar styles. So I think that would be my one concern with them too, is I'm not sold on the way they're going to play. I like the roster construction in a vacuum, but I'm not sold on the way they're going to play.
I think you could argue with, in a potential OKC Houston series, OKC arguably has 3 of the top 4 players in the series, depending on how you view. Like, I was not impressed with Şengün against Golden State in that first round. And granted, small sample size, like, give him some. I'm a big Şengün guy. I think I voted for him 3rd team All-NBA. So I think he's really good. But I think, like, I would rather have Jalen Williams than him as things stand in a playoff series with what we saw from Jalen Williams during that run. And I think you could argue Chet with the defense and the floor spacing, like that's a conversation. So that's still something that it's just OKC is ridiculous with the Shea, J-Dub, Chet trio, to say nothing of the depth and the defense and the size and all that. But so Dipsy Doo has been talking about Austin in the chat. So let's get into it. You want Bam for AR, Wiggins, Kessler, Isaac, say a name and why a team would trade that player for what we offer. So this seems to be an anti-AR.
Yeah.
Bam's I don't think Miami. Yeah, I don't think Bam. Well, I don't think Miami does that
next year.
Lakers would not trade AR for Wiggins. Kessler's an interesting one. I think both teams would probably want something more. And then Isaac, no. I mean, he there's a couple reasons. Well, one is he's very injury prone. I mean, AR is better. Let's just start with that. AR is better than Isaac, but then he's injury prone. And let's just say there's some things off the floor that
the controversy
I don't think would go well in LA. I don't think would go well with LeBron. So let's yeah.
I think 2 names that I think the Lakers could potentially be interested in, either now or down the road, would be the 2 New Orleans wings, Jones and Murphy. Those are guys I would consider moving AR for. Probably Murphy much more so than Jones. But
I saw a report about Murphy being available, so
it's not.
They want a veteran, they want a young player, and they want multiple picks. So the Lakers, depending on how you view Austin, if it's like Austin, Dalton, and a pick, I don't think the Lakers would do that. So
yeah, I think the New Orleans wings are 2 guys. I don't think there's a ton of names that make a lot of sense right now, unless you're getting Kessler and like a bunch of draft capital, which doesn't make sense for Utah to move off of either.
I think if you're trading AR, you have to fill 2 holes. You have to fill the point of attack defender hole and the rim protector, and ideally improve the bench. Like if you're just trading him for a center, doesn't really move the needle that much.
I'm sorry, Mitch Potter. Look, we're just answering the questions that are being asked in the chat, in this case being super chatted. But let's get into some non-AR topics. So we mentioned Houston and some of the things that they did. There's also Boston, who is tearing it down over the past couple days, traded Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons and a couple of seconds. Also just traded Kristaps Porzingis. Those 2 moves saved them about $28 million in actual salary, but overall close to $180 million. Might even be a little bit more in their luxury tax. They were able to duck under the second apron, and there could be still another move potentially with Sam Hauser or someone else. So with Boston, and this all stems from the Tatum injury and the early exit and them having to make some tough financial decisions. But I assume as Laker fans, you guys are happy to some extent that they are taking a step back, but obviously unfortunate circumstances with Tatum. But with Boston and like, do you feel like they extracted as much value as they could have for Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis? Or, I mean, of course, like there was the pool of teams that could take those guys on, and they, Brooklyn being part of the 3-team trade, but also Portland wanting to take on Drew, I guess, try to compete. I don't really know what Portland's doing either. Like, what do you guys think of those two returns individually, and just Boston being able to duck the second apron?
I think they accomplished what they set out to do in the first 2 days of the offseason. They got under the apron. I don't think they were ever going to get like a king's ransom back for Porzingis, obviously, and we saw that with Niang in a second. But I think
I didn't think it was that dire, but I guess it was.
Yeah, I think getting Simons and acquiring draft capital to move off that contract with Drew, and Drew's an awesome player. I think he would fit amazingly next to Luka, but like he is under contract through his age 38 season, and they were able to move off that and acquire draft capital in the process. So I think they accomplished what they set out to do, and I think they operate like a really smart organization that has a goal and accomplishes them as fast as possible. And I think other teams should strive to operate in the same way as Boston, as much as it pains me to say.
I think the Lakers might start operating that way with the new ownership.
Hopefully.
That's what I was gonna say. It leads right into that. Like, hopefully, the Guggenheim group is going to bring some of what they have at the Dodgers over to the Lakers, and they'll be operating. We won't be giving out player options to players who don't really have a market, and be locked about what we can do because we gave people who don't deserve it money that they don't deserve.
Quickly, the rich get richer. So Carter Bryant to San Antonio at number 14, and then Thomas Sorber to OKC at 15. So now, OKC has 3 centers better than any of the Lakers centers.
I mean, this hoarding is also and if Phoenix was going for this, I don't know if I'm going to give Ishbia that much credit to say that he's going for this kind of like hoarding to get off of one of them for a bunch of assets. But I think that's definitely what OKC is doing here. They're probably going to flip one of the centers that they have on their roster for a bunch of assets and backfilling with good players.
Smart.
Very smart.
Or I know this is a novel concept to the Lakers, but they could have 3 centers on the roster. That is, there's nothing in the CBA that prevents that. Any other thoughts on Boston before we transition?
Do we think they're trading Jalen or White? It doesn't look to me like
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think they just take a gap year and then go into 2026, 27 with White, Tatum, and Brown. And I think there's a couple more super chats here. This one, apologize, Kevin. Kevin Brown, who has more value around the league, AR or Derek White? Would you swap 1 for 1? So this is an AR question. Let's try to keep it shorter because I know there's been a lot of AR talk for most of the show. Quickly, I would say I think Derek White probably has more value, in part similar to the Bane AR conversation, just him being under contract. So Derek White, I have it here, making 28.1 this upcoming season, then 30.3, 32.6, and then 28-29 has a $34.8 million player option. However, I will note he is 31 and he's going to be 34 by the end of this contract. Austin is 26, I believe, going to be 27. He might be 27 right now, but there's a 4-year age gap between those two. So actually, maybe thinking about it now, if you have some assurance or confidence that Austin's going to stay and you're trading for him, I think you can maybe argue Austin has more trade value, but I think it's probably close. And thinking more out with like years 33 and 34 with White, that might be a little concerning.
I think White has more value to a contender and AR has more value to a rebuilding team, because I think you can
I like that.
structure an offense around AR. You can build around him on the offensive side of the ball, and White is just an awesome connecting piece that guards and has proven that he can be the third or fourth best player in a championship team.
I agree
Any
with
other-
both of you. I agree with
Yeah,
both of
same.
you.
Okay. We will, in terms of would I swap them,
I
Derek
would.
White would be really good. I think Austin's at a different level with the creation, but obviously defensively, White's at a different, like, that's, I don't know. That's a tough one. I might tap out on that one, but I like, you could talk me into it, I guess. I don't have a strong opinion. Then one more super chat from Music420. That's a cool name. If LA wants to win and wants Luka to sign, then they need to trade AR and connect, or Luka's leaving 100%. AR is a really good player, but a little overrated. So look, I keep getting paid to answer AR questions. I appreciate them, but I get if you're in the chat and you don't want to talk about this. I don't think trading AR or Dalton will affect Luka re-signing. I think, or extending. I think Luka is going to extend. I think we've seen the clips. Luka's walking around in his Laker gear. He's a loyal dude. I like, he is a feet on the ground, like I am where I am type dude. And what I mean by that is just like, I think wherever he's at, like that's where he's focused. That's where he's present. He's giving his loyalty. I think he's going to extend. So yeah.
I think that's something else that's really interesting about this OKC Sorber pick is there's a team option on Hartenstein's contract ahead of 2 seasons from now. You're backfilling that spot. You probably have to pay Chet or J-Dub around then. I think this is just a good case study of how the best teams in the league kind of manage their assets.
Think ahead.
If they can lure Presti away, then I'll have the Lakers winning the offseason.
That would I would agree there. Let's see. We got one from Tony. Hey, Jovan, love your videos. I'm from Singapore. Shout out to Singapore. Give me your best offseason for the Lakers. Name 3 players to get for a perfect offseason. Cheers. Okay. Well, I've said I think that Claxton and Wiggins are probably the 2 best. I mentioned trading Rui, and Kevin gets upset. I will put him to the side for now. I think Claxton and Wiggins would probably be like, I think there's a way between their tradable assets to go get those 2 guys. You are going to be trading Rui, Gabe, Maxey, the first, probably a swap or 2. Kevin is back. And so I think those 2, and then either a Capella for the taxpayer MLE, or I like Bruce Brown if he's willing to take a discount and is in that price range. I like Gary Payton II. So I'll say I would say Claxton, Wiggins, and Bruce Brown. I think I look at this team a bit differently, but you could also, I guess, maybe Gary Payton is like a minimum guy, and it's something like Claxton, Bruce Brown, and Gary Payton. But yeah, I mean, I think thinking higher, if we're talking like best realistic, I think it's something like trading for a starting center, trading for a starting wing, and then getting another backup, like solid backup rotation wing or backup center with that 5.7, and then some values on the minimum. But for you guys, chime in here. What would be your 3 guys that, let's say like 2 trade guys and then 1 guy with the 5.7 tax MLE?
So I'll go with Wiggins, Claxton, and Gary Trent Jr.
Okay. Inside, just mention Gary Trent over here. So that would be the tax MLE. What about you, Vijay?
I would go, like Keoni said, Claxton and Wiggins, and Luke Kennard as my potential free agent or taxpayer.
Okay.
I just would love to see the fit with Luka. I think it would be awesome.
By the way, Yang Hansen just went number 16.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Whoa.
Centers flying off the board left and right.
Centers are valuable now.
The kid from Penn State, I think Mike likes him a lot. Mike Garcia likes him a lot for the Lakers. He's still there, so he might be our last hope.
Wow. Where was he? He wasn't projected anywhere.
No, he's
high,
projected like 30 to 40. Yeah, like 35.
Second round projection. This is
centers, man.
There's been some interesting choices tonight. I'll say that.
Very interesting.
I don't know if we can argue too much with how the Grizzlies have drafted, though. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, so it's going to be what, Edey and Hansen as their two primary centers. Oh wait, this is part of a trade, right? Yes, he's going to Portland.
Oh man.
Okay, still don't get that. They already have 3 centers.
That means the center might be available.
So now they have 4.
Yeah.
They have Ayton, Klingon, Williams, and now Hansen. So is someone getting rerouted to the Lakers? Is that
Time Lord to the Lakers
here? This is the draft's getting interesting now.
Okay.
But going back to let's go back to Tony's question here. So
Kevin, for me, I would do Claxton, Sharp, and Beasley.
Okay, I like the
former Beasley's fit. I blame Darvin Ham for that, but
well,
and Beasley also,
Okay, so I guess Sharp as which one's the minimum in this scenario? Sharp.
Yeah, Sharp would be the minimum.
I like Sharp a lot.
I wish we would have traded for Sharp last trade deadline. So they tried. I know
they should have been instead of Shake Milton.
I know, like why Shake Milton? He wouldn't have been that hard. They include him, just ask.
Have you gotten an explanation, Jovan, as to why they didn't push more on that? Or the reporting was they didn't.
I've heard they didn't even ask about Sharp.
Yeah,
it wasn't even it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't they asked and got rejected. It was he didn't even come up.
I would have included more to just get Sharp. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Portland actually has. I
was gonna say Shake kind of fits the front office's free agent signing mold of
Lonnie Walker,
the Lonnie Walker, Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent.
I guess the thing with Shake though, it's a non-guaranteed contract, so there is some kind of
there's some value there. But I'd rather just have the restricted free agency of Sharp.
So Portland has 5 centers because of Reith too. I forgot about
Reith.
Oh yeah.
So they might be getting rid of 2.
Or they're just market inefficiency. Just have all center lineup. I don't know what Portland's doing. Music 420, thank you for the super chat. It says Jovan, no loyalty, BS after what Mavs did to Luka. You could be right, but at least in the conversations I've had with people who know Luka, they contend that he's a very loyal guy and the Lakers have treated him well and that matters. So we'll see on August 2nd. Kevin Brown, I'd take back Dang and Mozgov if we could get rid of Pelinka. Or he said Pelinko, but I'm going to assume he means Pelinka. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah. I'm going to sidestep this one, but if you guys want to jump in and answer it. That's
I get
I'm
the
gonna-
sentiment, but the Deng and Mozgov contracts might have been so bad that I wouldn't.
Historically
That-
bad. I love Dang as a person,
that would mess up
but
the cap sheet, I will say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a little bit. All right.
Dallas took a center too, or Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota took a center as well. Banger.
Dr. Funkology with the might be the comment of the chat 2.5 hours in. I forgot Vando was on the team. We have not even mentioned Vando yet.
hey, just posted Instagram pictures of him shooting.
There you go. Nothing like the off-season
Yep.
shooting
Bando with a 3-point shot. Good player.
IG content. Let's see. Dion says, hey, Jovan, if you guys can pick one player each that could have an elite career in this draft, basketball Hall of Fame type, who would you pick? A player that hasn't been talked about as much. I was going to say Cooper Flagg stands out as someone. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be a draft expert with this. I very much have been catching up over the past week and learned a lot with Mike Garcia in our conversation. I would say, I guess, outside of like the top 6 or 7, I do think Derek Queen has like all-star potential. And I know he's like, I could see him being that like Şengün, Sabonis type of Vucevic type where, and I just did a cross-racial multiple cross-racial comparisons, where he could be like that offensive big who's like limited defensively and has some, that's where the concerns are with Queen, but or an Al Jefferson to throw it back, 15, 20 years. But I guess that's the guy outside of like the top 6 or 7, where those are typically the guys who are all-stars and future Hall of Famers. What about you guys?
I'd say Cedric Howard. I think he has a chance to be really good, like Klay Thompson, Jalen Williams type. I think his floor is KCP, but I think he can be an elite 2-way player who can just light it up from behind the arc.
I believe a lot in high school pedigree too. So I think 2 guys I would highlight are Trey Johnson and Fears. I think both of them are kind of top 7 guys, but the athletic upside is through the roof with both. And I think Trey especially has some of the stuff that we see with Ace that has people talking about his scoring upside, where he just makes some unbelievable shots. And I think in the right situation, Washington is a tough place to go, but I think in the right situation, Trey Johnson could be awesome.
I was gonna say Queen or I don't know, Walter Clayton possibly. Who knows? Queen's size, and I don't see Queen as a center, but he could be like a in-betweener, power forward center. I don't know, but either him or Clayton possibly.
All right, and then Keenan says, do you like McNeely for the Lakers? I think there's been a couple McNeely questions in here. What do you guys think?
I'm skeptical of players where they highlight their shooting and they don't perform. And he was atrocious. His shooting numbers are bad. So no, thank you.
I think the one thing with that is that he shot the lights out from the free throw line, which usually ends up being more predictive than 3-point percentage in college. So I think if McNeely's there at 55, you obviously take him and you forget about it. If you're trading up into the end of the first round, I'd be a little bit more skeptical as well.
One sec. Okay. Mitch Potter, considering new ownership, why do you think we are doing nothing tonight? If I'm Luka, I'm pissed watching this first round and Lakers inactivity. Again, to bring it back to the beginning of the live, like I said, the Lakers kind of have this history of not doing much on draft night and there being a lot of smoke or a lot of activity that leads to inactivity or not results. Look, we're still not even at pick 20, so there's some time left for them to do something. I will say, like, I've been hearing stuff the last couple of days that they have been aggressive, and I think they are trying to get a Walker Kessler and Andrew Wiggins, guys like that. But we haven't really seen, outside of the Mark Williams trade, it's been a lot of draft pick trades, right? Like specifically of guys, it hasn't been as much player activity. So that's another thing to consider here. But I wouldn't count out them doing anything tonight. Young Claire, thank you for the super chat. Lakers still interested in Rob Williams. Not at the price that Portland has wanted, so I think the price has to dip. That would be the one thing. But going back to last year, they wanted a first, and I don't think the Lakers will do that for a guy who's played 61 games the last 3 years, which, if you do the math, that's 20 games a year.
Hey, would you guys trade Austin to Portland, with some filler, if you could get back Kamara, Thibault, and Williams?
I would.
Thibault's redundant. So if it was another center in there, no.
I guess it depends how good you think Kamara is going to be.
I think using your minimum flyers on guys similar to what Dallas found with like Exum and Jones can accomplish.
If we could get Jones as like a backup or a third, I'd be very happy.
I probably would. I like Kamara a lot.
Yeah. It's just Austin is so
I will
powerful.
note he is already 25. He's a little bit old. Like, I feel like in my head he's like a 22 or 23-year-old, but he's. I mean, the interest. Like, if you could get Denny somehow in there, that starts to.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Denny's too valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, if you could get Denny and Kamara, I'd put Dalton and the first with Austin.
Yeah. Oh, easily. Denny and Kamara would be amazing. And Denny's taking off.
That's a tough one.
That's tough for me too. I think the problem with like trading Austin for a guy like Kamara is you have to replace the scoring somewhere. Like, you can't. It's not just going to come from Luka and Braun. Like the
Rui.
32, the 32 points a game that Austin generates have 30.
You guys doubt me, but Rui will be a 20-point per game scorer one day. He's projected to be. He's going to be 16 to 18 before his injury. That's all I got to say. We're so close. This year, no, we're close.
To Vijay's point, like, I think it's tough with like, I keep coming back to this with trading Austin, where, like, I guess that's where to go back 10 minutes or so, like the Derek White thing is interesting, because I think I kind of feel like that type of player is probably like the minimum I would want in terms of purely like the offensive end. Like, I think Austin's a better offensive player than Derek White. I think he's a better pure scorer. I think he's a better passer, a better ball handler, playmaker. Then, the defensive end is where, if you want to argue for White, like, that gap could tilt things in White's favor. But I think like that level of player is probably the minimum I would feel comfortable going into next season with, like, replacing Austin with. If you were replacing him with any player lower than that as a guard ball handler type, I think the offense is taking a real hit, because already this was not a good offense. This was a like barely above average offense as constructed. And I think there are certainly things that they could do better, and offensive organization, and maybe, to Kevin's earlier points, like using Rui in different ways. Like, there's different things they can do, but I don't think you are going to have like your ceiling offensively if you don't have another high level creator. And I don't think you can rely on LeBron to do that for 82 games. And even then, it's like you eventually need that second guy. So I think they're in a tough spot with that, because if you trade Austin for a wing or a big, you now have this hole at guard, I think, that I don't know how you fill. Got a lot of Ayton chat in the chat.
I think Ayton is a move you make, not like you don't feel great about it when you make the move, but you hope that Luka can get the best out of him, and being around a winning culture again can kind of improve his motor. We've talked about this earlier in the episode, but like the price for Ayton is so prohibitive that the positive could be that you're opening up minimum slots, like vet min slots on your team, but I also don't know whether Portland wants to take 4 guys back for Ayton, or 3 guys back, or whatever it is.
That's a good point. We also should mention Behringer went to Minnesota at number 17, and Walter Clayton went 18 to Washington, but that's being traded to Utah. Well, that's kind of high for Walter Clayton, no?
Yeah, I think this was the front end of his range. I think him going before the point guard from Illinois, Yakachonis is I think how you say it. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, he's another one who I was lower on than most people, but I'd still go with him over Clayton Jr. I like Clayton Jr. though. He had some pretty clutch moments in the tournament this year.
So I'm looking at the trade machine to see how this works with okay, so I mean Rui, Maxey, and Gabe for Ayton works, but you're giving up
I'd rather have Gabe and Rui than Ayton, but then again I am biased. So
he's got 2 years left. Or no, he's expiring.
Ayton is expiring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think that makes it more interesting.
that does make it more interesting.
So what
You
did
can't
you
Because
extend
I don't think he's going to get 35 again. And
No.
Yeah,
No,
so
he'd get like 25.
if that.
He's still like a 15 and 10 guy. And at his peak, he's a 20 and 10 guy. But he's not going there again.
I think it would be in the 18 to 25 range.
Because the new NBA, it's like you never know.
I think the Miles Turner contract would tell us a lot more about what a guy like Ayton can get, because I think Turner will get a lot more than what Ayton would get. So
And he lost some money in the finals there, for being honest. Unless,
Yeah, I mean, I think he's lost some money the last few years, to be honest.
yeah.
I think his reputation's taken a hit.
Maybe we can get him for cheap.
Let's see, Dion with I like this question. Hey, Jovan, what were you guys surprised about with JJ as a year one coach, and one thing he can improve on, even if you don't see it as a negative thing JJ does? I would say I was impressed with his defensive game planning, and it's hard because we're not in these meetings to know how much of that's the assistants versus how much of that's him, but getting the guys to buy into the defensive identity that they had, certain roles that they had, and having this group be the best defense in the league for 24 games. Like on paper, I made this point a million times, like this was not a group that should have been the best defensive team in the league for a month and a half. Like that, they just did not have that level of personnel, as we saw in the playoffs and as we saw later in the season. But I think his defensive game planning, I think of the Denver game, the 2 New York games, the Boston game, Minnesota game against Ant, like in the regular season, like there was several high level defensive game plan games down the stretch of the season from JJ. And one thing he can improve on, I mean, I think we go to the playoff series, and I think being a bit rigid and stubborn with the rotation and his leash with some of the guys, and he clearly like had an affinity toward, I think like guys like I don't know, a guy like Gabe maybe had like a longer leash than a guy like Jackson or a guy like Vando. So I think not, and sometimes it felt like he was trying to fit the team into more of what he wanted them to be rather than what they were. Like looking at, he really loves the Celtics and Missoula, and he wants them to play like that, but they just didn't have that style of play. So I would say those are a couple things that I thought he did well, and also that he could improve on. What about you, Kevin?
I agree with the defense portion, even though we don't know how much of that is to the assistants. And my point again with the negative portion of JJ is his stubbornness sometimes when it comes to lineups. That was kind of frustrating. I wish there was more experimenting. I wish he would give other players bigger leashes versus Gabe. And just because, and also the Jackson Hayes thing, I don't know. He looked great for a while. We played him a lot, then we just went away from him. But then again, like, that is Jackson's fault due to Jackson's inability to not foul and make stupid fouls and then complain about them to the refs when it's clearly a foul. But yeah, I would say I'm very impressed with where he had the team, essentially with all the chaos that was happening in the first year. We looked really great before the Luka trade. And I understand it took a lot of time to gel, plus the Rui and LeBron injury that messed up things. So if he was more willing to not be as stubborn, and I feel like whenever he talked to the media, whenever we had a bad game or we were critiquing him of certain things, he kind of got very heated. But I have way more positives to say than negatives because of the Darvin Ham experience, which I won't get into that, but
I think something that was like underrated because of some of the controversy about playing five guys in the playoffs was how well he optimized a lot of role players on the team. I thought Rui was optimized throughout the season when he was healthy. I thought Gabe gave the Lakers a lot when he was playing, which was kind of like adding a free agent almost from the previous year. I thought Jackson throughout the regular season kind of played to the best of his abilities. And I think something that's underrated is that he was able to get LeBron to play really hard and play really hard on defense. And there was a long stretch of the season where LeBron wasn't taking plays off, wasn't kind of doing some of the things that we've seen in the past that like you expect from someone who's playing their 22nd season. And whether or not that was a conscious decision by LeBron or JJ kind of earning that kind of buy-in, I think you have to give him credit for optimizing the team throughout the regular season, particularly after that road Miami loss. And then for something that he could work on, I think we've touched on a few of the things. I wasn't like super impressed with how the offense looked post Luka trade. I think they have an entire offseason to kind of hit the whiteboard and come up with some better structure, better kind of organized offense. But I thought that the offense has significant room for growth that I have no reason to believe that we're not going to see in the next few months.
Yeah, I think overall, JJ's obviously a positive. I think he's a smart guy. He's also, and you guys say stubborn. I think he's an arrogant guy, and I think that sometimes gets in the way. And I think, like, I know he wants to coach them hard, but I think you have to coach people based on who they are, as opposed to like, this is my coaching style, and I'm just going to treat everybody one way. And he kind of seems to be a pretty big hard ass, and I don't know if that's going to work for everyone. And but he doesn't do. At least from what I see, maybe Jovan, from background, but He certainly doesn't approach LeBron that way, and I know he's talked about like going to Luka and saying, "Hey, are you okay with me coaching you hard?" I don't, he said that. I don't know that he's necessarily chewing Luka out either.
Yeah.
So
Jovan, you're muted by chance. Or by the way.
I was saying, I think he tries to balance it based on personality, but I think there are clearly, like, I think Rui and Dalton were two guys he was sometimes hard on that you would just see him like chew out going into like a timeout. I mean, especially Dalton. There were several clips that went viral and he forgot plays several times. And yeah.
I feel like those are more egregious mistakes, though. Like
Yeah,
I don't think it's
yeah,
that's not
we
even
don't-
on him.
like his temper was that. But yeah, I think in general, like I will say, at least in conversations I had with players, like they were all pro J. Like no one was really had issue with JJ, so everyone praised his communication style and the clarity with the roles, and like he would talk about, he called it touching the guys on a daily basis, which out of context can sound kind of funny, but he like, I think that the big thing, and I think this is an important part of coaching that like gets overlooked, is like there are like from game to game, practice to practice, like something could happen that upsets a guy, or they get in their head about something, right? And I think with JJ, it was checking in to make sure, like, hey, you good? Like, maybe someone didn't play as much the last game, and it's like, hey, you good? Like, where are you at? And I think having that empathy and that awareness of what guys were going through was a big part of why the guys bought in so much. But then that kind of went out the window to some extent in the playoffs with his back against the wall. And I think that it became like do or die. And I don't think he handled it great.
If I may chime in, I do wish JJ would have experimented more with the lineups. I know you guys are going to take this as a surprise, but I wish Rui would have come off the bench after the DFS trade. Like, I know you guys like, because
that's what I thought at first too.
It's
Or
just
like
because
that should have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, the way I was very against it at first, because I'm like, Rui's cooking, Rui's doing amazing, and Rui clearly wants to start for the Lakers. It like is very clear, and like obviously he has confidence issues with his playing, because when Rui's confident, we've seen him go like 5 or 6 from 3, and he's smiling, sticking out his tongue, and like everything. But throughout the whole season, our bench sucked. And there was 2 ways to address that if we weren't going to trade. It was either after the Luka trade, it's either move Austin to the bench or move Rui to the bench, because DFS is not going to supply you with the sufficient enough scoring there. So like I could easily see Rui coming off the bench and averaging like 14 to 16 being great, or Austin doing the same thing, which if we had that in the playoffs, because multiple times in the playoffs when we were playing the Wolves, their bench would have about like 20 to 30, and our bench would have 2 to like, or not 2, but like 5 to 10. Even at a point, like I'm pretty sure I saw our bench have like 4 points or something like that, which if you don't have a bench, I know you run guys like longer in the playoffs, but if you don't have a bench, you're not going to win, even going like 5 out, like no matter what.
Couple of updates here. We had Nolan Traore, the younger brother of Armel Traore, Laker great, getting drafted by Brooklyn at number 19. And then Yakuchonis, I probably just butchered that, went to Miami at 20. Let's see. Shout out to RP Smooth with the yo-yo. Ryan Rich, you think the Lakers trade for a center with Portland? They made a surprise pick in the draft and have tons of centers. We touched on that a little bit earlier, but I certainly, within the realm of possibility, I would say Robert Williams is probably the most likely among the group, but just because Ayton's tough to salary match. Ryan Rich also asked if I think the Lakers make a move. Probably put it like 30% right now.
Jovan, have you heard any of them about them maybe buying a higher second round pick?
Not not tonight so far, no. But they're always sniffing around late first, early second. So I think early second's more realistic, but okay, we got a lot. I did not expect DeAndre Ayton to be such a big part of the chat tonight, but let's see. Let's talk. Well, we talked about Dallas. What would you guys think about? We hit on the Gafford extension, but what did you guys think about the Kyrie extension and just the value with it? I felt it was a little low for what he maybe could have gotten, but 3 years, 119.
Yeah, so like 39.3.
Yeah, seems a little bit low for him, but he is coming off a big injury. He is in his early 30s. What did you guys make of that contract?
He has a player option at the end of that too, but then again, he'll be...
Yeah.
I mean, he had the option for 25, 26. That was 43, but he got 3 years tacked on. I think it makes sense for him.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't make as much sense with the CBA's inflation rate, so I do think it's a little bit low, but I'm happy he got paid after getting hurt. I think I'm happy to see like his career kind of back on the upswing after getting traded to Dallas.
I'm also happy. He probably liked his fit with Dallas and essentially like how he was appreciated. And obviously I think he could have gotten more. But then again, he's probably viewing this as his last contract, and it gives his team the ability to still compete. And I think they get the mid-level exception at at 5.7. So they can go sign a D'Angelo right there. So I don't know. I think he could have gone more. But
I had to share this. This was too good.
That's crazy.
My former colleague John Krasinski can't wait to hear in about 6 months.
The fact that they wouldn't include Jaime and they don't even play him, and I'm like, you don't even play Jaime.
I mean that means they didn't want him. I don't blame them either. I don't think getting Durant would give them any direction.
Yeah, but they're in a play-in limbo. They're always just going to be in the play-in with Bam and Tyler Hero. And with Tyler Hero is the worst defender in the league. Not the worst. He's a very bad defender. Him and Garland going back and back, being who's worse? They're both trash at defense. So I don't know.
That was just a good joke that I had to share.
Oh, Pat Riley. I feel bad for you fans. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Let's see. No other trades have happened, right? This has been a weird draft, dare I say.
Yeah, so many centers.
It has been.
A lot of centers.
No
a lot
trades.
of teams that we don't know what they're doing.
Or minimal trades.
Shams, I guess, reported during the draft telecast that they're already. I think Anthony Slater at The Athletic reported Kuminga with Miami, but Shams just doubled down on that.
Kuminga for Wiggins.
I mean, that Wiggins back to the Golden State.
That'd be funny. No.
So some notable names: Danny Wolf, Noah, Penda, Jace Richardson, McNeely, Clifford, Kalkbrenner, The Arrow, Saraf, Newell, Jones, Fleming, Powell, Proctor. Yeah. Mitch Potter says that Tyler Hero comment makes me even more embarrassed that Tyler blocked me 5 times in 1/2 in middle school travel ball. I don't know if you're kidding or not, but I hope this is a real story.
That means you're from Wisco.
He's in the league. No reason to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Best player from Wisconsin ever.
You know the current NBA news landscape is slow when they're talking about Kuminga. I mean, that's where we're at right now. Now it's
I'm surprised
the situation is seeming like I don't blame him, I guess. They could be the 4 seed next year, and
it's still they're not going to win.
They're not going to win, no.
I don't get why Giannis doesn't do it KD. I guess he has more years. I thought the Spurs should have got Giannis, honestly. And who knows?
Mitch Potter says nope, dead serious. Okay. Well, also, what was the height discrepancy, right? Because Tyler Hero's about 6'4", 6'5", so
But it was middle
depending on
school
your
too.
height, it's respectable.
Where do you guys think Giannis goes?
He's staying in Milwaukee at least in my opinion, he's staying in Milwaukee at least until the trade deadline.
That's so sad.
I actually, the East is so bad. You can say they're like I also agree that the rest of the roster is not fit to win, but he is so far and away the best player in the East now that I think him having the confidence to kind of get it rolling with whatever version of Milwaukee, I don't think it's crazy.
It's just that with Middleton and Lillard can't even win. So like without like what's the point? Like just blow it up, trade him for a bunch of picks.
Yeah, but they couldn't win. They couldn't win against Indiana or Boston or whatever team in the East that isn't a contender anymore. I actually thought the Milwaukee-Cleveland series, if Milwaukee got through Indiana, would have been really interesting. I think Milwaukee ran into a buzzsaw that beat everybody else in the East too.
Yeah.
In the playoffs this year, and I think it's not crazy for Giannis to think that he can contend in this version of the East.
We also have to remember who the coach of the Bucks is and who the assistant coach is. So I don't know. When those two people are on a team, I just say it's a wrap. So
I think they're gonna max Torian Prince this summer. Potter follows up. I also hit a 3 on him, and he told me going back up the court, there goes your highlight tape key moment. He had a good 4 inches on me at the time.
Oh, my two biggest offs are Darvin Ham and Torian Prince because of the 2023-24 season. That's all I'll say.
I get it.
What about Atlanta making a play for Giannis?
That'd be interesting.
You probably have to trade Johnson
or Daniels.
Definitely Johnson. I don't think Daniels is enough to be the piece and the centerpiece of that trade.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah.
Well, at the coral reef.
There's been some Toronto smoke, but I just don't see Toronto having. I don't know what are they giving up?
Gary Dick.
Grady.
Gary. Sorry. Sorry. Grady. Barrett. I don't know. Who knows?
Jakob Pertl.
Only Jakob was on our team.
Yeah, I mean Atlanta. I guess if the thing is, I'd want to keep a Kongwu or Johnson, and you got to give up 2. Well, you got to give up Johnson. I agree, and then you got to give up at least one of Daniels or a Kongwu, and that then kind of. I don't know if they have enough at that point. I mean. Honestly, how much better is Trey and Giannis versus Dame and Giannis? Because I would argue pre-Achilles, I probably would have rather had Dame.
I think Trey is a better pick and roll partner.
Like to win now.
Yeah, I think Trey's
a better pick and roll partner. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, Dame is. I think he's just a better offensive player other than passing.
I don't trust Dame anymore, but. This was before the Achilles tear, so.
Hale or Haley, I always mess this up, so let me know in the chat what the correct pronunciation is. But hey, Jovan, can any of the players on draft night get traded after tonight? In other words, can a trade be agreed upon after tonight for one of the players drafted tonight? Yes, they can still get traded after tonight. So that's still a possibility. It's you're trading the rights to the player. I think someone could correct. I think once they sign, then it becomes the, the 6-month rule is in effect. And then I think it would be whenever from the point that they sign. But until then, I think you're technically trading the rights.
Vijay, what did you think of Fleming?
I like him. He's still there. I think he's like he's the art. If you can't get a good big, he's the archetype that you would kind of want. He's another one of those guys that was so good in college that it's hard to ignore, kind of like Clayton. But I really like his size. I think he would help, but I don't see the Lakers making a move in the first round here, so it might be tough.
What I mean, well, okay, we got a couple questions. Then I got a good one for you guys. Mr. Pulp Gaming, Jovan, can the Lakers please fire Rob? I'm so tired of him doing absolutely nothing. He's either sleeping or at Disneyland. He's going to be the reason if Luka leaves. Please, Mark, please get rid of him. I've said this before. I mean, look, he just signed an extension, so he's under contract for several more years. I think he's got a runway of at least a couple years before any changes are made. So, barring the Luka situation going off the rails, which I don't anticipate, I think he's safe.
If I could chime in really quickly there too.
Go ahead.
I think if you look at Walter's tenure with the Dodgers, and this has been talked about, I don't think he's going to just get rid of the current basketball operations infrastructure. I don't think he's operated that way with the team that he took over. I think in terms of front office moves, it's much more likely that they build out infrastructure around Rob to not only kind of add some checks and balances in the front office, and of course I'm talking about new ownership, not whatever's happening right now, kind of build some checks and balances in the front office and just improve the overall infrastructure, like from pro scouting personnel to like analytics and whatever other kind of pain points they see in the front office. I think they're going to try to improve those before making any kind of dramatic firings or hirings, even for that matter.
I think it could. So I don't think he'll get fired, but I could see him getting sidelined, or at least his power reduced. I think after the sale goes through later this year, I think Walters will bring someone in to over like a Freeman type, but so like maybe they go make a run at Presti, or maybe it's Bob Myers. But I do think they're going to be sidelined. Like as much as Genie's got it in their contract.
You think going into next season?
Yeah, I think once the deal's finalized, I think you're going to see them bring someone in who steers the franchise in the direction they want to go. I don't think they're going to make huge swings on players. I think I do think they're going to build infrastructure, but I do think they're going to bring in someone to be the overall head that's not Rob or Genie.
I think if you look at what the Dodgers did with Coletti when Walter came in, it's hard for me to think that they're just going to even just remove him from power. I think a lot of the Walter kind of taking over for Genie, despite kind of the fan sentiment, is about some level of continuity and comfort for the Buss family, even if that ultimately doesn't end up mattering. And I think Walter will kind of respect that as someone who's kind of developed a relationship with the family.
Because I mean, if we take it at face value, and nothing I've heard indicates otherwise, that Genie really is going to still be the governor for the foreseeable future, and that was a part of this agreement. She just gave him an extension, so I agree with I think I could see a soft transition at some point. If you could get Presti, you got to get Presti, right? There are some exceptions to this, but I could see them maybe depending on how this season goes next summer, bringing someone in, and then that's kind of trending toward maybe him being on the outs. But I think he's got at least a 1 year runway, in my opinion, if not maybe even a couple. You got to also think I know we're looking at it through a certain lens, but the Luka trade bought him a lot of goodwill. It's hard to optically get off that. You trade for Luka and then 5 months later, well, you trade for Luka, you get an extension, and then a few months later, you're getting replaced. Like I don't think that's how it's going to go. But I'm also not as tapped in with the Dodgers side in terms of like how they did business because I'm NBA only. You have any thoughts, Kevin?
No, not really.
All right. Mitch Potter asks if I think Brooklyn's going to keep all their first round picks. So they got 8, 19, 22, 26, and 27. I don't think there's been any trades yet with this. I would assume they probably got to trade 1. I don't see how they keep 5 first round picks, but nothing yet. Probably be a late first, and maybe the Lakers could get in. This is an interesting one from Dion. Chat, who has a better 3-point size up? La blank U3 or Luka step back? Both are legendary.
Luka's is better. Bronze has more aura.
Yeah, Bronze has more aura. The fact that if I ever saw LeBron looking at the ball, I'm like, he's shooting, bro. Just looks at if he looks at the ball like that, it's a 3-point shot.
Yeah, LeBron
But the
is
fact that
definitely more insulting to the defender.
Yeah. Well, I almost would say like LeBron's shot, like I agree with the aura and you know it's coming the second he looks to the side. But then I would say like Luka's, I know this isn't technically part of the shot, but like Luka's celebrations are just so savage where I love when he points to the opposing bench and is like, play up on me. And then he just revels in talking shit. And it's like, I love that about Luka.
The refs don't.
I'd say this too, honestly, about Luka. I watched him a ton in Dallas too. I think he's actually kind of a criminally underrated shooter because he shoots 38% on horrific shot quality from 3.
It's crazy how deep they are.
Yeah, they're just deep. They're not great quality shots, and he hits them at a pretty absurd rate for someone who's taking such bad quality shots.
When he gets confident, his shots are just like, I'm like, why are you taking that? And it just goes in. I'm like, why am I talking?
I think Luka's better 3-point shooter, but LeBron's is a little more like makes you feel something sometimes.
We're a little behind on the draft, but quickly, Will Riley, 21. That's Utah, and that was part of that trade with Washington, and then Drake Powell, 22, technically to Atlanta, but that was part of the Porzingis trade, so he's going to Brooklyn. Then Jonathan Vida, I really like the idea of Wiggins with the Lakers. If we could work with him to get to that finals run, Wiggins, that's huge. I think we talked about it earlier, but I think we're all in agreement for the most part. Bowen Chung asked about Magic again, so I think this is in relation to potentially joining the front office. I think we've seen that movie before. He did get LeBron, but I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. I mean, I guess, yeah, he got LeBron, but yeah.
I think if we do see that, it would be, sorry, Keoni, it would be more of like an ambassador role, like similar to what he was with the Dodgers, and I think Magic would be perfect for that, like an ambassador for like a public-facing ambassador for the Lakers.
Yeah,
I do think it would be hilarious though for Walter to roll in and be like, Rob, let me introduce you to your new boss, Irvin.
That'd be funny. The tensions would be high again.
Yeah. Then Mr. Palp asks if the Wiggins deal is dead or still a possibility. It's still, to my knowledge, I mean, they didn't have to do it tonight is the thing, because the Lakers weren't trading any current. There was no first round capital being in terms of like tonight first round capital. So it's not like an urgent thing necessarily. Mo Love, has there been any info on Coloco, re-sign development plans? Not really. My read is they want to keep him they'd have to extend I believe the qualifying offer to him, but it's pretty low. What do you guys think about Koloko? And like, I've floated him potentially returning as the third center that the Lakers have not had in a year and a half.
I think he'd be a pretty good third big.
I saw a picture of him. He looks like he's bulking up. I will say that.
I'd rather have him than Jameson or Alex Len. I'll say that.
Well, yeah.
No, I know.
Alex Len is
Alex Len's crazy. I'm just gonna say, like, when you mentioned it, and like I watched tape on Alex, and I'm like, why would we ever even sign him? Like, if we would have signed Chris Jones or Kai Jones, I mean, instead.
Koloko, I think, has the right archetype for the kinds of bigs they want to develop, though.
Yeah,
so I think
running.
that's a positive of keeping him as a third big.
This question from Edgar: does the Mark Williams package they got scared and took away look nearly as bad now that he went for 2 firsts? We kind of talked about this. Like, I think it, and also it's probably going to be a bad first in 2029. Yeah. They got like 2. They got, or bad's relative, but they got 2. They got the 29th pick and a projected 20s-ish pick in 2029. So I think that
would you guys have, sorry for the interruption.
No, I'm not sure how I think this is more in line with Mark Williams' value, I would say, this current trade. So I do think it shows the Lakers probably overpaid, which I think we thought at the time, but with hindsight now, it probably looks even more like that.
Would you guys have, so if you had the option to go back in time, would you still rescind the trade, or if possible? I know my thoughts. I wouldn't have. I love the Mark Williams trade at the moment.
My thoughts on it are, if there was legitimate medical reasons to rescind the trade, no. If we're speculating that there wasn't legitimate medical reasons, then yes.
I think speculation-wise, I don't think there was legitimate reasons. I think.
I mean, I don't know if I can.
I know. We can't talk about what we don't know.
I mean, I'll just say from the Lakers side, what I was told was it was more like down the road concerns, and they viewed that package and that transaction as making that player the center of the future, right? Like, I think if they trade for a Walker Kessler, if they trade for a Nick Claxton, like, they are looking at that center as the center for the next 3 to 5 years. And I think with Mark Williams, that's where I think there's a something in the chat about like, well, he played the last 20 games or whatever of the season, and it wasn't about Mark Williams right now. It was, from my understanding, Mark Williams 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, like, what shape is his body going to be in? But that's also could be a convenient excuse if you're trying to rescind a trade and, like, getting cold feet with it. So I could see it both ways. But I mean, if we take a step back, right? So let's say they do the trade right now, they would have Mark Williams under contract in basically in place just of Dalton, and you don't have the first, and you have one fewer swap. So this summer we're talking about like Mark Williams is your starting center, and then what do you like? If Wiggins does cost the first, you can't get Wiggins. If there's another wing that's available that you want that costs the first, you can't get that player. So they would have been a little bit more limited with, I guess, like Rui, Gabe, Maxey as the 3 salaries that they could flip as expirings, and then really no other draft assets other than like a 2032 pick swap. So they would kind of be stuck with this roster, I guess, is my point. That have less flexibility, but unless they flip Mark Williams, but you traded for him to be your center. So I don't know if that would have been a possibility.
Jovan, the reports at the time were that Charlotte brought that deal to the Lakers. Do you know if that's true, or did the Lakers initiate the deal with Charlotte?
That's the Lakers side of it, that Mark Williams was not on the market and that it came together quickly after the Luka press conference when Rob publicly said that the Lakers were open, needed a center, were open to it, and Charlotte reached out after that. I've heard a different version that those talks are already ongoing before that, so I can't say that with like 100% certainty, but I know that when Luka got there, they had a meeting and a list of centers was brought to him, and he identified the centers he would be open to playing with. And as I mentioned earlier, Kessler, Okongwu, and Duran were players on that list, players Luka was open to, and players that the Lakers made offers for and were rejected on. So,
did they offer for Claxton at that time?
I don't have clarity on Claxton in that context. Those are just the three names I got. Bowen Chung, thank you for the super chat. Any thoughts about which players would be good to get when LeBron retires to pair with Luka? This is a fun one.
Jokic.
Forward looking. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Jokic, Giannis, Wemby.
We're one injury away from Jokic, bro.
That was okay. That was an insane. Like I know it was like kind of tongue in cheek, and he was being a little dramatic, but it was like, what are you saying?
If I'm Jokic and I hear that, I'm like, I raise an
I think my two answers to this would be in the 2026 free agency cycle if he doesn't sign an extension, Jaren. And then down the road, local guy is stuck in Cleveland. I know what it feels like to be stuck in Cleveland. Evan Mobley down the road is a guy.
Evan Mobley would be nice.
I like that.
OKC does it again. They got Clifford.
So we got Newell to New Orleans, and then Clifford. But then Clifford's being traded to Sacramento.
Uh-huh.
Kings are trading number 24 pick. Yeah. Unclear what they're giving up. So, yeah, he's going to Sacramento.
Yeah, Danny Wolf is sliding right now. That is something. Mr. Palp brought it up. That's something to keep an eye on as well.
In terms of stars to pair, I like Jaren Jackson and Mobley. Personally, I'm less sold on Triple J as a true number two. I think it's probably more of a situation where like he's kind of the Chet and you have a J-Dub. I know that's easier said than done. I mean, speaking of J-Dub and Chet, I guess both of those guys would be great second pairings with Luka. I mean, Derek Lively, depending on his development, again, if he becomes the player he could potentially become, that could be like a long-term fit there. I don't see like a guard, and that's in part because I think if you want a second star with Luka, it probably should be more of a wing or like, I mean, Tatum, right? Like, but he's probably staying in Boston. Like Jaylen Brown is an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, I would say like maybe one of the two OKC guys if they just get to a point where for whatever reason they're cheaping out or just like isn't making as much sense. Maybe they draft another player that kind of makes them expendable, like one of the two OKC guys. But yeah, it's. I mean, of course, Jokic would be epic, but I'm a little skeptical that they trade him.
I will say I'm not as high on I've seen the name floated around. I'm not as high on the Bam Luka pairing as I think some people are. I think that's another guy where like you want a little bit more scoring production from a true number two option, to me at least.
Yeah, he's not. I don't think you can win with him as your number two.
I like him as number three, but he's getting paid like a number two.
He's getting paid $59 million next year. That's crazy. Or in 2 years, or whatever it is.
Mr. Pulp says if Danny falls to the second round, we better be there to take him. He could be a steal. He could be the steal of the draft. I know you're on. What time is it over there, Kevin?
It is 12, but I haven't been getting much sleep in Japan, so that's
If you want to roll out, no issue. I mean,
You guys
welcome to
mind?
stay the whole time. I'm gonna go till the end of the first round,
Okay.
and of
Yeah.
course I will call it then, and then the Lakers will immediately do something, and I'll have to hop back on here. But you guys are free to go whenever you want, but I know it's much later over there, so. Okay, Mitch Potter asks, would you do a DK trade to pick Danny Wolf? I would not. And I don't even know that much about Danny, but based on the little I know, I would say no.
I'd rather have Renaud than Wolf.
This is also just too late to trade DK for the 27th pick or something like that. It's not maximizing the value.
This is game tight off the top rope. Would it be worth taking Bradley Beal if they added Malawach and Mark Williams? No picks, just salary match. Well, it's almost impossible for them to get to that salary. What is Beal's making? 50, low 50s, right? He's making 53.6, and then breaking news next year, he's gonna opt into that 57.1 player option. So getting to 53, then Mark Williams and Malawach. I mean, that's probably, you're probably talking like low to mid 60s in salary, which the Lakers, even if you throw in, I mean, Austin or Rui, Gabe, Kleba gets you to 40, Vando gets you to low 50s, you're still 10 million short. So like you have to throw in Austin, which at that point, why am I trading all that for that? So no, it's if Beal was making like 10 million, 15 million less, I think you'd have more of a market, but at 53, that's just, I mean, we're talking about Bam not being worth potentially as much as he's making, but he's like several tiers above Beal.
Jovan, do you really think they're gonna pay him to walk away? That's so like, why would he take anything
Beal?
less? Yeah, why would he take anything less than 100 mil?
I mean, yeah. I guess like the one thing you could argue is Jace Richardson just went to Orlando at 25. I guess you could argue like you could calculate I mean, this is all the back channel stuff that agents do, is like you calculate his value and then you say, okay, we will take the buyout for like to the dollar his value. But I mean, if Bradley Beal was a free agent, how much is he getting?
I think someone takes a mid-level shot on him for maybe
That's
2 years.
what I'm he's probably a non-taxpayer MLE guy, which is like 40 million off. What up, Ethan? Shout out to Enarks in the chat. Juan Velasquez says, what happened to fixing the airplane that Rob was talking about in his exit interview? I guess it's still in the hangar. I guess they're still doing some mechanical work on the left wing, maybe the right wing. They need,
I think,
maybe both wings. I don't know.
Maybe both wings. I think on this point though, like I could, obviously there's a lot of frustration like in the fan base right now about inactivity, but we were talking about this earlier today in the chat. They're like, if you're not going to trade, they don't have a first round pick to trade. So they don't really have to make a move right now. And that's obviously a glass half full perspective on the inactivity. But I think that is something to like keep in mind, is that they don't really have to make moves right now because there's not active draft capital involved in the moves that they'd be making.
Yeah. Jonathan Vita, circling back on the framework of this question, would you do AR and Kleba and second rounders? They can only trade one, be the 55 pick for Derek White.
I would. I think White is a nice balance of the two things that you're looking for, and I think that, I don't know if Boston does this because of the contract uncertainty with AR, but I like the Derek White fit next to Luka.
I would also. Derek White would be a perfect fit on the team.
I'd do it.
He's like a plug and play.
Yeah, he's also. He's pretty.
I know he's older. Yeah, I know he's. Yeah.
I do
I
it.
think I would do it too.
I do it, but then you have to go get Claxton. I think.
Yeah, you'd have to. You can't not have
Um,
center.
I
That'd be
really
good
like
stuff.
this one from Edgar. Rob needs to hire Nathan Fielder. I think that would
Pilot?
that would
737 pilot?
Dion, anyone have info on that Jake LaRavia guy from the Grizzlies and Kings? Would he potentially sign for like 6 to 7 million? So he does share an agency with Austin Reeves, and they have been hanging out this summer. They just had a big get together with the agency. I think that's probably in his price range. I don't know if he's going to get non-taxpayer MLE offers. He's an interesting one.
Great shooter.
I mean, like, good shooter. I think like like above average defender. I think he could be like a microwave bench guy and like solid rotation piece. Like I don't know if I view him as he doesn't
Missing piece.
solve, of course, the center issue, and I don't think he solves the starting wing issue. But as a bench player, I think, especially like if you do, and Kevin, I just apologize in advance. If you do trade Rui, like he could be that like Rui light type guy off the bench in like a smaller role, smaller sense. But especially like if you trade Rui and Dalton, you're going to need some firepower off your bench. And
Yeah.
I think he could be that type of guy. So I think that's in line.
Well, you know who
Anyone else?
You know who
on
else
LaRavia?
shares an agent? You know who else shares an agent with Austin? De'Aaron Sharp.
No, and De'Aaron Sharp, and him and Austin were all shooting around like a week ago. So
Yeah.
Austin's recruiting. If we get both of those, I'd be pretty happy. I'd be okay.
Braden, thank you for the super chat. Hey, brate, it's been a while. I've been refreshing my Twitter like an absolute crazy person. Walker or Claxton, Lakers, and I'll be so happy. I'm with you. If they got any of the centers I mentioned earlier with Kessler, Okongwu, or Duran, or Claxton, or Gafford, like those to me, those 5 guys, any of them is a major win for the offseason. And I think vaults the Lakers to a different level in terms of contention in the West. But yeah, I'm skeptical of 3 of the 5 and maybe even 4 with Gafford. I think that's why I just keep coming back to like I don't see a better / more realistic option than Claxton, and it's like just go get him.
I actually have a question on that topic. Like what do we think is the skepticism or worry from either the Lakers or Brooklyn about the Claxton to LA framework with the expirings and Connect going back to Brooklyn?
I saw because I saw Dan Wojcicki, now of The Athletic, reported that I guess someone he talked to with the Lakers doesn't view Claxton as a shoe-in for the starting, like I guess doesn't like the panacea as at that spot. But I would push back a little bit and say like that doesn't mean they don't like him. And I know they've been a fan of him in the past. My assumption would be it's the frame, and it's just like I think there's been this. They've needed more muscle, and having a Jackson Hayes and or centerless looks, you are playing smaller, and I think they want like this big imposing center. That's where like a Duran, for example, like you would check that box of just dudes just yoked and is a beast. But again, I would contend like beggars can't be choosers. They only have so many options, and if the alternative is like Clint Capella, then I would rather have Nick Claxton. On Brooklyn's side, I think it's just a matter of trying to extract as much as they can from LA, and they're probably pushing hard for a first and DK, and the Lakers are, I would assume, pushing back on that and not trying to give up both.
Would you guys give up both?
I would.
I would as well.
I would.
I think
Would
like
they-
Luka's been super complimentary of Claxton. Eastalk mentioned this on your episode with him, Jovan, that Luka's been super complimentary of Claxton's kind of perimeter switchability. And I think it's easier to find a big bruising backup center than it is to find a good starter level center in the NBA. So I definitely would too.
I think what they should have done is tried to push that through at the deadline and got Claxton and Sharp for
Would have been
for that
perfect.
package and maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Claxton, Sharp, and DFS.
Well, actually, I'll go to this one because it's on the same topic. JB says Kessler can't shoot free throws and Claxton is 210 pounds soaking wet. Both would be a liability in the playoffs. So one note, and I've made this note before, but I think it's a pro Claxton note, is that I think JJ likes the switching defense, again, in the mold of a Boston, and likes having versatile defenders. So I actually think JJ would prefer a Claxton type defensively. And like Claxton in some ways, and this is oversimplification, but like he's a better Jackson Hayes, like, and he's a much better he's a much better player on both ends, but he can do a lot of similar things to Jackson Hayes and is a much better rebounder. Like I think there's a big gap there, but Claxton could fit into like that type of defense the Lakers played for 6 weeks as the best defense in the league. I think Claxton would fit in seamlessly to that scheme. Whereas Kessler or Duran, Okongwu is pretty versatile defensively. But some of these other bigs, you probably have to go drop. And then that changes, that has a ripple effect throughout the rest of your defense. So I hear you on like Claxton skinny, but again, there's no center you're trading. You're not getting an all NBA center, right? Like, barring some team doing the Lakers a massive favor, you are not getting an all NBA center. So every center you pick, you're going to have a problem with. And that's just like, it's about masking those weaknesses. And I think Claxton, again, really fits in a switching scheme.
I also think that the Claxton's frame and his size is less of a factor on the Lakers than it would be in another situation. Your point guard is 230 pounds. Your power forward is 250 pounds. You're like both of like LeBron and Luka are great positional rebounders. Austin's a great positional rebounder. I think the center is like you're looking for some element of short roll playmaking. You're looking for like a guy that can defensive rebound, protect the rim, and finish around the rim. And I think Claxton checks a lot of those boxes, and he's available. So to me, it's almost a no-brainer.
Anybody else? All right.
Yeah, I think you can.
Oh, go ahead.
I think you can find someone to bang, like be the physical presence.
Pause.
I'm sorry. Listen, we're 3.5 hours in. We got to have some fun. All right.
Yeah, I think you can find someone to be the physical presence. I think go get Claxton. Like you're right. The switchability, the rim running, the rim protection. I don't know what they're waiting for. Like they're not going to get Kessler for what they're willing to pay, and they're not willing to move AR to get more assets to pay for Kessler. So I just don't understand. Like if they come back and their answer is like, oh, we got Brook Lopez. Like I don't think Luke is going to be super stoked on that. I know LeBron won't.
Yeah. They gotta trade for a center. I think that's just what it doesn't have to necessarily be Claxton, but let's see here.
Brooklyn used all their picks. They took Danny Wolf at 27 and they took Ben Suraf at 26. So they used all 5.
All right, there you go. I mean, I have to think there's a consolidation coming at some point, but
I'm glad somebody.
Danny Wolf looks sad. I mean, I think it was sad for dropping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look,
Tyler B says hey, Jovan, I can't wait for the new ownership to come in. Buying a second round pick should be a strategy every year. Real talent slides every year. I agree. And you got to give the scouting department as many at-bats as possible. That's been the strength of the front office.
Kalkbrenner is still out there. He might drop to the top of the second round, make the Claxton trade, and then buy a top second round pick to get Kalkbrenner. He's a big guy, 7'1", 270, almost 3 blocks per game.
Yeah, and then Yannick Conan Niederhauser is still out there too. He's a rim runner, the Penn State kid.
Yeah.
Wow. Brooklyn is the first team in NBA history to draft 5 players in the first round.
There you go. As many
That's
cracks
wild.
at it as you can.
I guess so. This one here, Kessler 1, Claxton 2. Kessler rebounds and defends better from J Note. I agree. I think Kessler's better, but I just think it's less likely. Inside, this is one that I'm glad he brought up. Inside's been on top of the bigs during the show. Thoughts on Pirtle? I think I'm higher on Pirtle than some, especially factoring in his contract. He's only got 1 more year. He's got 2 more years left. I think he's got some. He's not a lob threat, so that he's not a lob threat. He's not really a shot blocker, but his rim protection numbers are always good. He's a good rebounder. I think he's an underrated passer, short roll playmaker. Can be like a little bit of an elbow hub or DHO hub, and he's got a floater. I think he could punish mismatches in a way that when Istok was on my show, he talked about like that being an underrated part of being a center with Luka is like you need to be able to score outside of just rim running and pick and roll play. So I think Pirtle can do that. I just, he's another big that you probably got to play drop with. There's some spacing limitations, of course, but that comes with a lot of these bigs. And the contract, I guess, is the thing that, I think they value him a lot. So you probably got to give up Dalton or the first. And I guess, you could talk me into that, but I don't know. It just depends on the price, I guess.
Hey, Jovan, do you think a first and a first swap is enough to get Claxton?
A first and a first swap? Maybe. I mean, if I'm asking for the swaps, I want the as far out as possible. I want 20. So I guess 2031 pick and 2032 swap, or vice versa. I mean, I guess technically they can't trade 2032 until after the draft, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe I would assume they want Dalton, though. It's probably close. Jonathan says, not saying the Lakers will get Turner, but do you think the Pacers re-sign him? I do. They made the finals, and I think it's going to kind of be similar to what Boston's doing, where they have a little bit of a gap year. But you're not I know Boston traded Porzingis, who's hard to replace, but Turner means a lot to that organization, and it's hard to find. They don't have another center alternative. Boston, they might retain Horford. They have Cornette. They have some options. Indiana, if they lose Turner, they're just screwed. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, the only way for the Lakers to acquire Turner also would be the sign and trade, which would cap them with the first apron. So I don't think it makes sense for the Lakers either.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, just that's one of the least realistic ones I feel like out there.
Agreed. And he probably cost himself some money, but I think he's still getting 20+ million, and that's also outside of the Lakers' price. If the Lakers do a sign and trade, they're hard capped at the first apron, so that creates a whole other problem that they don't have right now. This is an interesting one from Jonathan. Would you do Reeves and DK in a first for Neesmith and Nembhard?
I think you have to think really long and hard about this.
That's a tough one.
I think Nembhard, Yeah, I think this one I would need to. I don't have like an off the rip answer to this. I would think about it, but probably leaning no initially.
If you didn't include the first round pick, then I don't know. Yeah. Honestly, yeah.
I
I'd have to
think-
think about
To be
this.
honest, I don't think either team does it.
Yeah.
I don't think the Lakers will trade Reeves for the Nemhard and Naismith, and I don't think Indiana would do it. Like I mean, as bad as I think Luka and Austin are as a backcourt, can you imagine Halliburton coming off an Achilles injury and Austin enter backcourt?
Halliburton's still a good defender, but yeah, his Achilles.
I wouldn't call him a good defender. I would call him a mediocre defender that was
I would
protected
call
by
him
a phenomenal defense.
I would call him a passable defender.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Like if you're Indiana looking farther out, Austin doesn't make sense with Halliburton. Like that's just too redundant and you know, I think like when we talk about, I think there's a distinction here of when we talk about Luka and Austin, I think Luka, at least from a size perspective, like you could hide him in the front court and still have that like backcourt defender that kind of offsets some of Austin's limitations. If it's Austin and Halliburton, you're just going straight like Dame and CJ, Mitchell and Garland, like that type of build where you can, with the right front court guys, like protect them, but it's a narrow team building strategy. I would also argue like I don't know, Naismith, and I really like Nemhard. I think he's kind of become like the perfect 3-and-D 2-guard. Naismith, I thought got a little bit exposed in the OKC series at like the highest level, I guess, of just like, I think he struggled to defend Shea and J-Dub, and I'm not like, it's not an indictment on him by any means. I just think like he to me is much more of a number 2 defender than like a number 1 defender, and I guess if you're getting both of them together, like that kind of solves it. But I don't know, that's tough. Well, I will say the Lakers were really, I've reported this before, but they were really high on Nemhard. He was in the Max Christie draft. They were trying to trade into the early second round to get Nemhard. Then Indiana took him at 31, and then they ended up going 35 for Christie. All right, we got 2 more picks here. Hugo Gonzalez went to Boston at 28.
I think this question up here by Hiley is interesting to the would you include DK in a Wiggins trade? I think I would say you include DK or Rui. So it's either DK in the expirings or Rui, not both.
Yeah, I think if you can keep Rui, you definitely put him in.
Yeah, just move Rui to the bench.
I mean, that's probably the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if you guys saw, I forgot, there was a Miami report today about like what they're looking for, and it was they basically, it was like a chalk outline of Rui. They were like, we want a scorer who's on an athletic forward scorer who's on an expiring contract. And I'm like, that sounds a lot like Rui.
You guys doubt Rui, but he was 1 ejection away from taking on Team USA versus Team Japan. Yeah, exactly. And if he would have beat Team USA,
I mean, that would vault his trade value to a different level.
oh,
Jovan, how much does Miami value Ware?
A lot.
Yeah, Ware is amazing. If
he might be the most untouchable
Untouchable.
guy in the roster.
If only we could have gotten Ware or McCain, everything would be different.
Yeah.
We were like 2 picks.
Tell Khalifa, do you guys think they should look at Marvin Bagley as a 3rd string center? I'm not a Bagley guy, to be
Just get all the guys from the Luka draft, the Aitons, the Bagleys.
Yeah, I wonder how would Luka feel about Bagley being on his team. I guess it saved him from going to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Edgar, I also don't like a stretch five who can't do the shooting part when it matters. I'm guessing this is about Turner, though I'm not sure. David asked about Al Horford. We kind of talked about him earlier. Like, I don't. So in my center rankings, I think you get to, like, I think I mentioned Capella. After Capella, I mean, Lopez, I guess, is in a similar tier, but after Capella and Lopez, I think you're in trouble. And I like Horford. It's just as a 39-year-old, might even be 40 now. I don't think you want to rely on that dude as like I think JJ would love him and he would fit into exactly how JJ wants to play. He's a stretch five who can switch, but he's also 40 and he's been in the league since 2007. So that's a little concerning.
I feel like
we have a keep
outside
Rui from Aaron here. So Kevin has a fan in the chat.
Hey, when Rui is your favorite
Phoenix.
player in the league, it's hard out here.
Phoenix took McNeely, so
Telly Khalifa says, if you guys send Rui out to Miami based on the reported talks, ideally, what would you want back?
where?
I mean, Wiggins. I'd love if they threw in
No, I know.
Haywood Highsmith, but I don't see that happening.
They would even throw
I'm
him in
pretty sure
the
he
Durant
was.
trade.
Haywood Highsmith was
Yeah.
untouchable in the Durant trade. So.
Well,
Yeah. Maybe some people.
I mean,
view Rui
everyone's
as high as I
untouchable in
do.
Miami, apparently. Let's see. Is there anyone else? Yeah.
Resign Cam.
Nah. I mean, Kyle Anderson. It's got a couple.
Slow-mo.
But then you got to match that salary. So.
But that's another guy where you're getting rid of Rui
Yeah, I know.
and you're replacing Rui with the perimeter guy, and then you're getting another power forward.
Yeah. Jonathan again mentioned, no, wrong one. Game tight. Sorry. Luke Cornett. I like Cornett as a backup. I do not. And we got asked about Goga earlier and I didn't really get into it, but like Goga's a borderline one for me where I feel like sometimes this has been a thing for like, since I feel like I've been covering the NBA, but there's always like the backup who's like per 36 or per 100 possession numbers look great and they're very efficient. And it's like on paper, you're like, this guy could start, but I view Goga as like a really good backup. I don't know if he's a full-time starter. Like I guess compared to bringing back Jackson and starting Jackson, sure, but I view him similarly to Capella, and Capella you don't have to trade anything for. All right, we got one final pick here, Clippers. Then we will wrap. I appreciate you guys doing this. I appreciate you hopping on, and I hope this was fun for everybody.
Yeah, it was a good time.
It's been a great time.
Surprisingly little Austin debate, but I guess the
We've
chat's
gone like
turned us
almost
away
an
from
hour
there.
without talking about Austin. Really.
I know.
I'm impressed.
After that guy
Mac-
mentioned him, or
Mac, DFS going to opt in. I think he probably opts out and it signs a lower annual value extension would be my read.
What do you, Jovan? What do you think? Like 15 a year?
345.
I think he's getting that right now. He's getting like 50.
Yeah, I could see maybe a little like 352. Even
I thought like 336. Yeah,
336.
448. Yeah.
352 would be what? That's still
That's
what,
17.
14? Oh
17.
shit, sorry, I meant
352,
bad math. I meant 342. 342.
Yeah. that makes sense.
I think you get 345.
And in 3 years, 42 million to be clear, because I got aggregated once saying Austin was going to get 350 million, and I was like, I would need to be drug tested if I said that in actuality. Yeah, I could see 342 somewhere in that, or maybe like a fourth year and a little bit lower. Like I guess that would be 452, 455, something like that.
I don't know if I'm the Lakers, how excited. I mean, DFS is awesome and is like his game isn't aging so poorly at all, but like I don't know how excited I would be to enter another kind of 4-year contract with
Yeah,
a
4
with
years
a
too
role
long.
player.
Yeah, he's 31. That's a
Yeah.
little, and already he's
Mhm.
shown some aging.
Yeah, with
I
his
think
32,
3
I
years
think.
would be
I think he's 32
shouldn't.
now.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't want to go past 3 years. Mitch Potter says the first 2 hours were all Austin. Look, I gotta answer the questions I get asked. You know, JB, like your initials. Would Wiggins' contract take us out of the Triple J sweepstakes in 2026 free agency? I don't think so, because they would still, right now they only have, we'll say theoretically Luka has extended, and so Luka's under contract, Vando's under contract, Dalton, Shake has a non-guarantee, and Bronny has a non-guarantee. No, Bronny's guaranteed. I don't know why it showed up as non-guaranteed, but they're projected to have like 80 million in cap space. So with Wiggins, that takes another 30 off, I guess, or almost 30. So they're borderline. Like if they could, it's gonna be tough to dump Vando, but it's borderline. They could still get in the mix for Triple J. I wouldn't want to pay him more than 50 anyway.
I mean, does anyone think Memphis isn't going to max him out?
I
Depending on
don't
their
think they're
direction.
gonna. They're because he narrowly missed third team All NBA, so they don't have to supermax him. But
They save like 150 million or something crazy
yeah,
like that
kinda, so.
in that.
I don't a max. I'm not sure if Memphis wants to give that to him, but like 45, 42, I'm sure that.
Jonathan asks about Mark Walter and making moves. So we touched on the Rob part earlier. I would recommend going back and checking that out. My understanding is it's going to be multiple years with Genie as the governor. So I would assume at least 3. But of course, like there's a lot of context that goes into this of like who's the front facing governor versus like who's actually making the decisions behind the scenes. Like I have a hard time imagining Mark Walter ponying up $5 billion and not having a say at the table. Mac says if he walks and frees up the MLE, would you, he's talking about DFS, would you rather use that to sign Nah than keep DFS? Yeah. And that also solves your Rui. You could then keep Rui, start Nah, move Rui to the bench.
Guess who drafted Conan Niedenhauser?
The Clippers. I really like him.
Yeah, he seemed to fit a lot of the. It's another one where like you slot him into the G League, maybe early in his career, and then you have Koloko developing. Who Koloko was also a first round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, another
So
opportunity.
according to ESPN, their best available Reynaud, Fleming, Penda, Thiero, Kalkbrenner, Watkins, Markovic. There's some guys. There's some guys to trade for in the early second.
Vijay, would you rather go Renaud or Kalkbrenner?
I think of all the available options, I would rather go Fleming.
I'll defer to you guys because again.
Especially with
All right.
these second round
Oh my
picks, like
God.
the production. What happened?
What?
Yeah, I can't believe they didn't. No one picked him in the first round.
Yeah,
I can't believe I
Fleming's
just
still
realized that.
there.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. They definitely should buy a pick.
Yeah. He
Also worth
was
noting-
awesome last year.
We noted
He's
McNeely going to Phoenix, but we didn't. That's part of that Charlotte trade. So
Charlotte,
McNeely's
yeah.
going to
Yeah.
Charlotte. Yeah.
Someone, I forget who it was. Someone in the chat was like, Phoenix got that Hornets front court. Richards and Mark Williams.
Yeah, that's and maybe the Lakers will have the Nets front court with Nick Claxton and Daron Sharp. That would be a nice outcome to the offseason. But go ahead.
Are they having a party tomorrow? Are you going down there?
They're not. So plan tomorrow is I think I'm recording first episode of the Great Western Forum with Pete Zayas and Anthony Irwin. We're doing our 3-man weave, and then maybe doing an episode. I might wait till Friday. I think I'll probably do the center rankings on Friday, and then tomorrow I'll go live and cover if the Lakers. I'll probably go live for the pick, but if they do a trade, I'll go live for that. But we'll see. But I appreciate you guys for hopping on. This was fun. This was great. We'll have to do this again at some point. Maybe if the Lakers trade for someone, we'll
if Rui's traded, I might not attend.
Emergency pod. We'll have a funeral for Rui, and Kevin can give a nice sermon on Rui's tenure as a Laker. But
please, Genie, never trade Rui. The Japanese market loves him.
Not there yet, but as Mitch Potter says, thanks, Late Night Gang. Appreciate you all for tuning in. This was fun. This is officially by far the longest stream I've ever had. So nearly 4 hours. This was great. And again, appreciate you all. For Keoni, Vijay, and Kevin, I'm Jovan Buha. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow at some point. I'll talk to you then.